Live.
Good evening. We good?
Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the December 17th School Committee remote meeting. Happy holidays, everybody. Tonight's meeting, public input will be on. We'll be using the chat function, and then I know we do check email as well if people can't get on the chat. So we'll hear comments about specific presentations at that time. Anything that's not on the agenda will be addressed at the end of the meeting. So the way tonight's meeting will go, we'll have a vote on the consent agenda. Then we'll have we have guests. Kate Point, Principal Kate Point, and Director of Guidance, Lynna Williams, here with us tonight to do a high school presentation, guidance presentation, and we'll have that after the consent agenda. Following that, we'll go into our back to policy BDF. We aren't going to review the other policy tonight because Dr. Doherty is still doing some background work per the direction of the committee last meeting. Following that, we'll have the Student Opportunity Act again, a hybrid update, and excuse me, let me back up. I'm sorry. After the high school presentation, we'll have a kickoff for the upcoming budget. So that will be after that, and then the policy and the Student Opportunity Act. An update on the hybrid program, and then we'll end the meeting with the reports. So before I do that, I'd like to have a roll call. John Parks.
Here.
Tom.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
Aaron.
Here.
And Carla, and
Here.
and Chuck Robinson is here. So so why don't we jump right in, and I'll Dr. Doherty, did you want to say something before Kate and Lynna?
No, I'm just going to pull up the slides.
Okay.
And then I believe Lynna, unless Kate, did you want to say a few words first?
Nope, Lynna can definitely jump right in, and then after the presentation, we can go right to the handbook updates.
Thank you, Kate.
Hi, everyone. Am I good to go?
All right, Lynna, yes, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. For those of you that have seen me present in the past, you know that but a part of my job is the college admissions process. And it's a part of the job that I love, and I love talking about it, but there is so much more to our job. And I just want to start off by saying that the counselors, we focus a lot on the post-high school planning, but there's so much more to what we do, from the social emotional counseling to the academic counseling. But tonight specifically, you're going to hear about the college admissions part of our job, because that's what I was asked to do. But it is a part that I enjoy a lot, so I'm happy to be here. I wanted to start by saying that just talk a little bit about our beliefs, because over the last few years, there's been many parents who have stopped me in the grocery store or just had side conversations with me about their kids who have kind of struggled because so much of what they felt at the high school was that we're a one-size-fits-all school as far as what the options are for after high school, that there's this push that everybody needs to go to college. And while a huge percentage of our students do go off to college, and we are preparing them, from the guidance counselor point of view, our beliefs are that every student is an individual, and we want to celebrate and honor all of their differences, and especially how that pertains to the post-high school planning process. And that we don't believe that there is the one size fits all and that college is the only option. There are so many different options for students. And over the last few years, we've been focusing a little bit more on that, but this year in particular, there's new staff in our department, not only guidance counselors. I have a wonderful department, but we have a new administrative assistant who is amazing, who has really just allowed me, she's taken some of the things that I've been doing the last few years off my plate, and which allows me to do more of the director responsibilities. But in addition, she's been so wonderful about updating our website and gathering resources for us. So it's really, we have a shift in our department, and that I'm really excited to talk about. So over the last, I'd say year or so, some of the things that we've changed in our department to not focus just on the college piece, but also just introduce students to more options outside of it. Last year, as you know, I talked about this at the school committee last year when I was presenting that we held a gap year fair in January of last year that was really well attended. There was over 200 students from many different schools who participated in that, which was a great turnout for our first one. And unfortunately, we couldn't host it this year, but I'm hoping to be able to bring that back. I'm a big supporter of gap year programs, and I would love to see more students participate in those in the coming years. The guidance counselors 2 weeks ago had a day where we spent time doing virtual meetings with different programs, specifically around the trades. And that was a great opportunity for us to understand all the different options that students have. If they're interested in, plumbing or doing something with electricity, or if they want to go into cosmetology. So our administrative assistant set up a day for us, and it was really great and eye-opening for us, and provided a lot of resources for us that we then are sharing with our students. Last year, I talked a little bit about that we brought in a new program called U Science, and it's an aptitude program that students, they're playing a game, a series of games on the computer, and then the results that come out of it are really interesting. All the guidance counselors took it before we brought the program in, and it nailed us to a T of all of our strengths and also areas that may not be our strengths, but it definitely showed how we kind of come together as a department and help each other out. And we started with sophomores last year. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, our guidance curriculum wasn't exactly the same as what we've seen in past years, but we're hoping that all the sophomores will be doing it this year. We also opened it up to juniors and seniors because we just think it's a great tool. Last year, I was really excited about the switch that we had in our college fair. So we've had, I think this last year would have been the 36th year that Reading hosted a college fair, but last year we switched it to a college and career fair. And unfortunately, we had to cancel it because of the pandemic, but we were really excited for that particular one because we had brought in more representatives from the trades to share with students. And so we're not hosting it again this year due to the pandemic, but we hope to bring that back in future years. And for those of you that are new to the high school, that is a college and career fair that we partner with 8 other high schools. So it's a pretty big turnout in Shriners, and I hope to do that next year. We also partnered with the Northeast Voc. There's a great Saturday program that many of our students attended last year. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the Voc had said that Reading had the highest turnout as far as students because there's districts all over that are allowed to send students to their Saturday program. And it just gives students a taste of the different vocational options. And so there are 4-week classes that they can take. And I think there's 3 different sessions. It's going to start up again in January of this year, and information will be sent out to students. But it's a nice way for students who are interested in the trades just to get their feet wet, just to see what it's about. And then they also add a post-high school planning piece to it, just guiding them of all the different options that they have. So I know many students have already asked about it, so we're excited to share that information with them. And then the guidance website, if you haven't had a chance to see our guidance website, I am really excited about it, specifically the post-high school planning section of it. We've spent a lot of time updating things. There's a ton of resources, pretty much like any question you might have, you're going to find an answer on the website. So I definitely encourage you to check it out. And we are also improving the other side of the website that is about the social emotional aspect of things and providing resources to families. So definitely, if you get a chance, check that out. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is this year, well, actually, it would have been last year. We partnered with Ben Franklin Institute of Technology, and there's a few of our students that are doing a dual enrollment program, and they're there this year as seniors. And it's really worked out well for those 2 students. And there's more students who are interested in doing that. And it's completely free. It's a great opportunity. But we're also looking to expand that beyond Ben Franklin, because that's a wonderful opportunity for some students, but not for everyone. So we're just looking for options, because our goal in the end is that we want 100% of our students having a plan when they graduate from high school. And for those students who are interested in the trades, or they just know that they don't want to go to college, we want them to be able to start doing things senior year, so they just feel like it's just a smooth transition into the next phase of what they're doing. So it's a work in progress. I'm not going to say that it's perfect right now, but it's a work in progress, and all of these baby steps are getting us to a better place. So I'm excited. All right, so now I'm going to switch over and talk specifically about the college piece. And this is something that it's a hot topic, just especially because of the pandemic. And so I feel like the students I want to say that during this time, it's highlighted more than ever that students are more than a GPA. They are more than their SAT scores. And I've always known this, but the presentations that I do are so data-based and like sharing that information, but just as I was preparing for this presentation, I just really wanted to focus more on just bragging about our students and bragging about the awesome department that I have and the shifts that we've made, because we really, similar to teachers in the classroom, as far as counselors, we've really had to like jump right in and just figure out this whole college admissions piece so quickly. So we spent a lot of time last year figuring out what we were going to do to help last year's seniors transition, but what does this mean for last year's juniors, the current seniors? What does this mean in the admissions process? I'm sure many of you know that multiple test administrations for the SATs were canceled last year, and it was really stressful for the current seniors, because the idea that the SATs are so important to colleges. I was very pleased when there were over 1,600 colleges that went test optional. It was kind of like my dream come true, because I don't think the SATs are a huge indicator of student success. But at the same time, you know, as much as I might have been happy that the colleges went test optional, I also my job is to relieve the stress of the students and the parents. And so what we did this October is that we offered a school day test. So we canceled the Saturday administration simply because students were going to be coming from all over, even from New Hampshire, like just all over the South Shore. And we just wanted to provide a safe place for our students to take the test. So by offering it during the school day, it allowed us just to have just our students. I could keep it to 10 students per room. Our proctors would be safe, the students would be safe. And to be honest with you, it went off perfectly. It was a very smooth day. I'm thrilled that we did it. And I think it just relieved a lot of stress for the seniors. Even though majority of the schools were test optional, it still is helpful for the students to have the option if they wanted to submit it or not. In addition, I hope you guys had a chance to see the virtual college admissions panel that we hosted at the beginning of the year. It's on our guidance website, so if you didn't have a chance, especially the junior parents that are watching, I encourage you to watch it before we do the junior parent night in January. I think that panel really helped parents and students understand how it's changing, but how we're all going to take care of the students, and it's all going to work out. Again, our students are so much more than a number, and there's so many wonderful things that the students are doing, and I think that shows in how the colleges were handling the admissions process. We also hosted 115 college rep visits. So they were virtual visits. So normally college reps are coming into the building and meeting with the students, and we did it virtually this year. It was okay. It was what we had to do, and it's what all the area high schools were doing and colleges were used to doing it. The turnout wasn't as great as I had hoped it would be, but at the same time, when all of these visits are happening, it's when the students are getting used to the remote and hybrid learning, and I can understand why they weren't as well attended as they have been in the past. It'll be interesting to see where things go next year. I missed the in-person piece because a portion of it isn't just about the students connecting with the college reps, it's about the guidance counselors connecting with college reps too. So we definitely felt that loss this year by not meeting with them face to face, but we are looking forward to COVID going away, and hopefully we can go back to normal. And a lot of these things that we are used to, we can bring back, but also some of the things that we've learned to do this year, I think we're going to keep because there's just some great things that have been happening. We did eliminate our decile rank for the seniors, and that was something that we have been talking about for many years, but we had to speed it up and do it this year for our current seniors because of the grading for last year. So all of the schools, Reading is no different than most of the schools where we did pass, and complete. But when we looked at the data and we recognized that there were some students who, let's say if they took AP Chemistry sophomore year, they would have had a full year credit versus if they took it junior year, just one semester. So when you're looking at the data, there were students there that were at an unfair advantage, and that just didn't sit right with us. And so when we know that we've been talking about this for a long time, we have talked to a ton of colleges about the rank. We know that majority of schools are not even like looking at our rank anyways. It was time to just make it happen, and it was the right decision. It has not affected our admissions in a negative way at all so far. And then in general, I just want to applaud our guidance counselors because we stayed right on track with our timeline. Even though school started on September 15th, we did not miss a beat as far as when we started meeting with seniors, when we had senior parent night, when we did the college admissions panel, when we did the senior seminar. So we stayed right on track. And I am pleased to report that a lot of our students still applied early. And it's pretty much, you know, the same as what it has been in past years. So this is an exciting week over the last few weeks because a lot of the admissions decisions have been coming in, which is exciting for us. All right, so now I'm just going to talk about just our statistics. So what I usually do is I just kind of compare it to the year before. So there were 80% of last year's seniors that went off to a four-year school compared to the previous year. So it was 87% in the year before that, and all the years before that were roughly in that range. So there was definitely a drop last year, but I'm going to be honest with you, it's due to the pandemic. So there were many students who took a year off or just they weren't really sure what they were going to do. You know, the cost of college is really expensive, and many schools were doing online, so students were kind of weighing their options. And to be honest with you, the students who decided to take a year off, do something else, or take a semester off, or look at all of their options to make the best financial decision for their family, I really applaud them thinking outside of the box and doing other things. I don't have all the data of what the students are doing. Last year, as we know, was a challenging year for us to get the information. So I'm pleased that we were able to get the information that we did. I'm not worried about the drop in admissions. I think when not in admissions, in the percent of students who were going off to a four-year school, I think this current senior class in future years, I think it'll be back to where it was. And so as you can see, like when you look at all the numbers, they all just kind of match as far as people looking at alternatives for this year. I don't know. Okay. I don't know why that went blank. It's the section that says where our students go. The one right before that. Okay, well, it was there earlier, so I'm gonna just tell, oh, there it is. Okay. So our students went to 103 different four-year colleges. 76% stayed in New England, 52% stayed in Massachusetts, and out of that 52%, 47 went to state schools, which is a higher number than in past years, but again, not a surprise when you're looking at the cost of schools and what their options were for this year and what made the most sense for them financially. That doesn't surprise me. 7% from New York. I think that's pretty consistent in past years, and same thing with the 17% outside of New England and New York. So our students are still traveling all over. They're doing great things, and last year's senior class, it was a hard year for them. Not only did they lose a lot of their senior activities, but what did this mean as far as them traveling and going off to college and their first year transitioning to college. And I just want to say that I'm just really proud of our students and how they've just shown resiliency and their ability to persevere and look at this as a challenge and really just overcome some of these obstacles and just kind of embrace the changes. So our students are doing really well, and our current seniors are showing the exact same thing. As far as SAT scores, these are the mean SAT scores, pretty consistent from past years. You know, the thing that keeps jumping out at me is the 2018, because that was our highest SAT scores, but yet our lowest number of students in class, and that was the class from kindergarten all the way through when they graduated. Just an interesting piece for me. I'm only reporting the mean scores. I don't have any reason why our students go higher or lower, and some of it might even have to do with when they take the test and things like that. But it's relatively the same. And then this is the last two are about our AP participation, and in this format, it's a little bit hard to read, but I just want to say that APs were interesting last year. For those of you that didn't know, we had a lot of students who were enrolled to take the AP test, and then because of COVID, College Board worked really hard, and I will say I applaud College Board for very quickly having to turn everything around and do something drastically different. But the tests were all online. So our students had to switch from all year they were preparing for a long 3.5 hour test to all of a sudden paper test. And now all of a sudden they're taking a test that is online, 45 minutes in their own house. They had to worry about technology. They had to worry about submission. It was definitely a stressful time for our AP students. And so there were some students that chose not to take the test, but there were 244 that still did. There was a slight drop. It went from 87% from 2019 to 2020 was 80% of our students got 3. They scored 3 or higher on their test. That, to me, honestly, last year was an odd year. It doesn't really surprise me. It was incredibly stressful. I will say that in that May timeframe, a large percentage of my time was spent counseling students and parents on the AP exams, helping them with all the logistics, the technical difficulties, talking to College Board almost on a daily basis, helping the teachers, quickly adjust to things. So it was definitely a stressful time. So not a surprise that our scores went down. When talking with all of the area guidance directors, it started off as a group that was the Middlesex Guidance League, and now it's really expanded to many other districts too. We're all seeing the same thing as far as a drop in students who went off to a 4-year school last year, a drop in the SAT scores, drop in the AP exams. So it's pretty consistent with other schools, so I'm not too worried about it. But when we go to the next screen, you'll see that our numbers for the AP scholars still remained relatively the same. So when you look at, there were 29 students who scored 3 or higher or on 3 or more exams. We had 15 AP scholars with honors, 26 with distinction. So I'm really proud of our students who were able to adjust pretty quickly to the change. And thankfully, our students at our school did not have nearly the amount of technical difficulties as some of the area high schools and schools all over the country. I'm on an AP coordinator group, and to see all the stress that so many people were facing, that some of our students definitely faced, but not nearly the amount compared to other districts. So overall, I'm really pleased with how our students did and how our students and our counselors kind of adjusted to everything. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Lena. Great job.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Before we move on to the next piece, I would open it up to questions now for Lena. John Parks.
Lena, with everything that's going on this year, do we see that we're going to move forward with using a virtual platform more to bring in some colleges and in other types of situations? I know the one with BC was amazing that you did in the fall.
Yeah, I would like to continue. I got a ton of positive responses for the college admissions panel. So I would like to do that, whether that is virtual or in person. I would like to continue that. As far as the college rep visits, I'm going to take the lead from the colleges. Maybe it's something that we even do a combination of both. I like the in-person piece of it, and I think it also helps having them come into the building because we're going to get more students connecting with them. But as far as like the virtual tours and all of that stuff, I think things are going to be changing moving forward, and I really want to take advantage. My goal is to provide the students with the most access to like whatever it is, and so if that's virtual or in person or whatever, I want to provide more resources to them. So I am open to anything. It'll be interesting to see where things go with college admissions.
Tom?
First of all, Lena, thank you for the detail, the presentation. It's always great to see it. A little bit of an echo there, but can you talk a little bit more about the Ben Franklin Institute of Technology? What's that relationship? How did it form? And what else? You said we're looking at a couple different options in that space too to add to that. So can you spend a little bit more on that? Sure.
So to be honest with you, I didn't know about it. A parent had reached out to me and just asked if I knew anything about it. So I had contacted them just to learn a little bit more. I saw it online, but didn't realize that it would extend beyond Boston Public School students, and it was really open to anyone. So there's 2 different programs that they have. There's one program where students can take classes there and at the same time take classes at our high school. So it's really just focused on kind of getting their feet wet, getting them to take some classes, but then at the end of their senior year, they're done with the program. Then there's the dual enrollment program, which is a 2-year program, and that's what our students have chosen to do. So they've committed to taking classes there for 2 years, but during their senior year, they're taking all their classes there. It's free of charge, and it's the first year of their 2-year degree. So they'll get an associate's degree at the end. So really, they're getting a 2-year program for the cost of 1 because they have to pay for the year after high school. And so far, it's been it's been wonderful, and I've gotten positive feedback from the parents as well as the students that are participating, and there's a few students who are interested in doing it next year. So this is the thing about like the gap year programs, the Ben Franklin, you know, whatever it is, you just have to have a few students who start it, and then once the positive experience happens, then it kind of takes off. So we liked the fact that we know these students have a 2-year plan. So we're just looking for other options for students to also just kind of get their feet wet or take classes or whatever it is. So I can't say that I have a definite program in place, but it's something that the counselors are exploring, because more and more students are thinking that they don't want to go to college, that they are really interested in the trades. And high school, by the time they get to senior year, some of these students are looking for the next thing, and they don't necessarily know what that is. So if we can provide them with alternatives, that's my goal.
Great. That's really great to hear that we were able to be so accommodating in that way, and that it worked outside of Boston as well. Another question, I think you mentioned the coordination that happened around the SAT and having that in school. I believe I remember seeing something about a PSAT coming up in January, maybe for the juniors. But is there, and I think we've excluded sophomores from that. Can you talk a little bit about the PSAT planning and if we're going to open the doors for sophomores as well?
Sure. So actually, what we're offering, we're not doing, we did the PSATs in October, and that's the test administration. So it's normally in October for the sophomores and juniors, but because of COVID, we only did the juniors. So we're not opening the door again this year for the PSATs because it would be school-based testing. What we are doing is for the juniors, the SATs again, and that's on March 3rd. So I wonder if maybe that's because that information just went out to the juniors yesterday, I think. So we're doing the same thing for them that we did for the seniors in the fall. And again, it's to make sure that we have more control when it's school-based and it's just our students. So I can limit it to 10 students. I can, you know, not have students from other schools coming when it's a school-based test.
Okay, and I think I asked this before, but do we not administer the ACT? Is that not something that comes up at all?
We don't administer it, but there are students who take it. So that's part of the counseling piece, that when we're talking to students about standardized tests, that they have the option of both. I'm going to admit it's the College Board, like SATs are still the most common that our students take. That there was a growing increase of like students taking the ACT, and then it dropped, and it definitely dropped in this past spring. But again, I think that's because of COVID. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
Okay, thank you. I guess just one final note, you know, the AP Scholars with Distinction, the growth in that over the years is quite impressive to see. That's the kind of number that I like seeing going up and up. So kudos to the staff for that kind of growth. It's good to see. Thank you, Lena.
Yep.
Aaron?
Yep, sorry. Thank you for your presentation, Lena. That was really, really helpful. And I'm impressed by how much you has pivoted with the pandemic and still been able to support our students so well. And I'm also really excited about all the initiatives you're taking to help students explore non-college tracks post-high school. I have two questions. One is just a clarification about the number of students accessing our AP classes. So you listed that 244 took the test, and then you listed some categories of AP scholars. I assume that means 244 tests were taken, but not by 244 students, or is that 244 students took at least one AP exam?
244 students. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah.
And keep in mind, that's a combination of sophomores, juniors, and seniors, predominantly juniors and seniors. But yeah, it was 244 students.
That's awesome. And the AP scholars, there's no overlap in those categories. Those are all distinct.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wow, that's really great to see. My other question is not so much related to your presentation, but just to your work. What are you seeing in terms of the emotional / mental health of our students this fall, given everything going on? I'm wondering if you're seeing significant changes or trends.
Sure, I'm glad that you asked that, Erin, because it is a big part of what we do, and I think that sometimes is overlooked, and oftentimes people think that our role is simply the college and academic planning, but there is that whole social emotional piece. And I'll be honest with you, students are all over the place. So our students that previously were struggling are still struggling, but just in different ways. We have more students and more parents just kind of reaching out, talking to us about how challenging it is to be at home and sit in front of a computer all day and not be connected with their peers. And many students really miss being in person, and they like those days that they're able to get in the building, which is wonderful to see them. It's, I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little bit eerie, like that there's only a few hundred at a time. So it's just weird from us, from a counseling point of view. But at the same time, we're also hearing some parents say that their students are feeling like at ease being at home because of they don't have the social pressure that they have in the past of wondering what they're going to wear, who they're going to sit with at the cafeteria, who they're going to sit next to in their classes, you know, how they're going to get from, you know, one class to the next. So for some, they're finding this relief of not having that. But I will be honest with you, that makes me a little bit nervous because I don't know what's going to happen next year. And so I'm anticipating the increase in students struggling next year because they're going to have to learn how to socialize all over again. And the expectations and participating in class and all of that stuff. And so it's an interesting year, and I think everybody is handling it differently. But in general, you know, we're hearing students talk about some of the positive things that they've gotten out of this situation and skills that they've learned that they may not have had previously. They do have to advocate for themselves. They do have to get more organized and be independent and be able to advocate and ask for help because the teacher's not at home with them to see what's going on. And so it's all over the place. From a guidance counselor point of view, it's hard for us. I'm not going to deny. We don't see the students in the building. We're not seeing the students in the classroom. They're not coming into the guidance office. So we're used to a very fast-paced hustle and bustle, you know, department, and that's not what's happening this year. So we have to do all the reach out, and it's through Remind and through email, but the kids have to respond to us to be able to get them on the computer to talk to them. So we are definitely looking forward to someday when everybody can be back in school, just so we can have our eyes on the kids and connect with them. But I think there's a lot more kids who are struggling than we're being told because they have to feel comfortable to like reach out to and respond. So I hope that answers your question.
It definitely did. Thank you. And again, thank you all for you and your department that you're doing to support the kids during this time. I appreciate it.
It's highly enough of the department. They love the work that they do.
Lynn, I have a question. So, you know, I think we've all been concerned about this cohort of kids, you know, and, you know, what in terms of what they're getting being, you know, hybrid or remote, you know, going back now to, you know, last April, right? And not knowing when it's not the same, we all know, as full in person. And what do you have a sense as to what you'll see in the numbers in terms of gap year type decisions? I mean, I'm thinking, when I think of gap year, I was thinking more of like kids going to prep school because of their last 2 years in high school or last 3 years. And do you think you'll see an uptick in that? And will those schools actively coming in and talking to at the college fairs as well, or is it just secondary schools not?
They were invited, so some take advantage and some don't. To be honest, to answer your question, I'm not really sure what will happen. As far like the admissions right now, our students are getting great responses there, and I'm not going to deny that there are students who are not getting into some of their schools. So there's good and bad, but we're hearing a lot of positives right now. We do, even though majority of our, like it was about 80%, which is consistent with previous years, applied to schools in the early action range, but that other percent typically has applied by now, and some of them are just moving a bit slower than what they have in the past. I wouldn't say that that's a bad thing. Some of them are looking, you know, they wanted to do really well their first quarter grades and they want to do well second quarter. It will be interesting to see if more students are choosing that. I haven't heard that right now, but those are the types of conversations that usually happen more in that January, February range when they start hearing back from schools, or they just can't get their act together to apply because it just doesn't feel right for them. And then they're applying to the more of the prep schools at that time. So yeah, I don't have an answer quite yet.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more in terms of not even kids that don't even apply, just make the decision right at the outset that they're going to go to a prep school. Not because they fell short to get into wherever they wanted to go, but more knowing in advance that, geez, you know, I think I need another year of, you know, college prep or whatever. That's kind of where I was going with that.
I haven't had the counselors mention that to me, that there was an increase this year compared to past years. I have a smaller caseload than all of them, so I don't have anybody on my caseload that is thinking that, but that doesn't necessarily mean other people aren't. So it's a good question that you're asking. I'll go back and ask the counselors.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I just, yeah. Thank you. Carla?
Great, thank you, Lena. Thank you for your presentation. It was really helpful. Thanks for all your feedback about how you think the students are doing. Whenever we talk about students having a trusted adult in the building, we know a lot of times that that trusted adult is their guidance counselors, and how helpful your office is. And kudos to you for putting together such a great group of people. You know, even all these new guidance counselors, I've heard fabulous things from them. So between your admin and your guidance counselor, so thank you for keeping everybody calm and helping them along with the whole college process this year as well. So
thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Linda. That was great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Kate, there she is.
There I am. Hi, Lena. Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. And I know that it was different than in years past, and I think it's really because of the situation with the pandemic. And I think you did a really nice job capturing how we've had to pivot and the ways that we're supporting our students during this really challenging time. So I thank you and your staff, which is amazing. So I'm here to talk about the handbook. Lena is here also. She's going to remain on to help answer some questions that may come up in regards to the handbook. So in the fall, we did an initial revision of the handbook with the commitment to continue tackling the handbook in chunks over the course of this year to edit confusing language, update some of our practices, and this is the second iteration of that. So in the change memo, and I'll just quickly read this, the RMHS School Council, we met in November and December for a total of approximately 3 hours, and that did not include the asynchronous work that the committee members undertook on their own time, proposing edits to the handbook. We met and unanimously agreed, and this it was a unanimous vote with myself, teachers, parents, and our student representatives agreed to the changes that are outlined in the memo. These changes were also approved by the Rmhs faculty during the 2019 and 2020 academic year, where we met several times and just did not, the changes did not get implemented specifically due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The changes are specifically in the academic section of the handbook. And one thing I think to be really transparent about the why, we really were looking and are looking at the handbook revision from an equity and social emotional standpoint. So many of the changes reflect our work in regards to equity at the high school and are in line with the work that we're currently doing with our Portrait of the Graduate for our NEASC accreditation. So that's, I just wanted to make sure that I shared that. We edited section 3 part B, which is the bell schedule, including the new Friday schedule with half-hour classes that are updated. We moved on to section 3 part C for graduation and promotion requirements. And for the transcript, we're now going to be issuing credits at the end of the academic year, not at the end of each semester. And the transcript will have a much cleaner look to it, having just the year-end grade. So we'll still have quarter grades, midterm grades in future years, semester grades, final exam grades, but in the issuing of the transcript, that is going to have a much cleaner look where we'll have just the year-end grade. And there were a number of different rationales for this. It streamlines the transcript for the college application process. It's much easier for them to read and see if it's just a year-end grade. By awarding credit by semester, many students who have failed first quarter or first semester, they give up on the second semester or even second quarter grade because of the loss of credit. We found that it's much less likely if they have a weak or a challenging quarter, if the grade is and credit is issued on a semester basis. So full year awarding of credits keeps students engaged, and those students who may struggle for a quarter, there is a possibility that they can still earn credit for the entire year, even if they have an off quarter. In looking through the social emotional lens, there's no flexibility with credit being issued on a semester basis for students who might have significant medical issues to potentially medically waive one quarter, which would allow that student to kind of jump right back in and get them back on track. The current transcript is also a bit confusing to colleges, and for DECI, what we have to do, because we currently issue credit in a semester basis, Lori Miller actually has to combine the credits for state SIMS reporting and then take them, and then kind of separate it back out again. So this would help in our DECI reporting as well. Next section is the grading system and associated honors. A+ was added to the grade scale a number of years ago to allow for students in the college prep classes to be able to earn a 4.0. Without that A+, those students were not able to earn a 4.0. In looking at the grade scale, we decided as a faculty and school council agreed to transition to the Umass Gpa formula. F- was also put on the grade scale a number of years ago, and we unanimously decided to remove the F- as a grade category, and the adjustment results in a more accurate GPA. The F- pretty unanimously seemed overly punitive for our students who have already failed a class, where guidance and administrators already have access to the average. The F- really was not something that is needed. Colleges and other organizations were also pretty confused by the F-, not really understanding what that meant. So we've determined to keep the A+ on the transcript, but per the UMass GPA formula, weight the A and the A+ the same. This would be implemented beginning with the class of 2022. So class of 2021, our current seniors would still use the current GPA formula. And again, section 3, part H, weighted GPA. As Lynna shared, the pandemic forced us to take some quick action in regards to communicating out decile and class rank last year because of the pass-fail grades from last spring, or the passing complete grades from last spring. We had been talking about this as a staff for a number of years prior to me even starting, and the pandemic has allowed us to really take that step fairly quickly. Class rank and deciles, we have found, and this is really the work that the counselors have, they produce, it has produced unnecessary stress and competition amongst students, and that's anecdotal through student conversations with guidance counselors in the college process. Not calculating and communicating rank or deciles has proved to be a benefit for students in the college admissions process. And this is data that Lynna shared with me just in terms of college acceptances. And when the guidance department surveyed over 70 colleges last year, most of them said that communicating decile and rank is not even a data point that they look at in the admissions process. The guidance department did its due diligence and surveyed 27 other neighboring high schools, and 21 of the 27 don't provide any class rank, and the remaining schools are moving to eliminating it either this year or next year. So we are in good company removing this, the decile and class rank from the transcript. I believe we did have a question about whether we could still internally calculate class rank or deciles for potentially some scholarships or book awards, and the answer is yes. It's just not going to be put on the transcript, but we would still have the ability to calculate that as needed to support a student in a scholarship application, for example. Again, we're transitioning to the Umass GPA calculation formula. The current GPA formula has been communicated to us that it is confusing. Our current GPA formula is also discriminatory towards students in lower level classes. We learned that in doing the calculations, 0.3 points were subtracted from students' GPA if they were in the lower level classes, which we felt was highly discriminatory. And then colleges do their own GPA calculations anyway, and using the Umass GPA calculation formula gives a much more accurate GPA for colleges to then use. And then in multiple sections, and you'll see this throughout, we changed the word parent to parent or guardian, and this edit was made throughout the document to create consistency and inclusive terminology. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Kate. Is there any questions from the committee? Carla?
Great, thank you, Kate, for that presentation. Could I just ask you, could you give me more information on that UMass GPA calculations? I'm familiar with it in terms of UMass and how it ranks. But it says in your notes that it is used at state schools as well as other four-year colleges around the nation. So if they're not using that, it sounds like it is a possibly a gold standard, or if they're not using that, what are they using something different, or what is the case with that?
I'm gonna turn my attention to Lynna to answer that.
I have joked for years that if I could come up with one GPA formula that all schools, high schools as well as colleges use, I could be a rich woman. And Carla, the answer is that all colleges, like they use their own different formula. So I can't specifically say what one school is using versus another, because sometimes it's a matter of the numbers may be similar, but they count different classes in their calculations. So some will take all the classes into consideration. Some will only take, you know, certain number of academic classes and certain electives and things like that. So it's a little bit different, but I would say in general, because we have such a high percentage of our students that apply to UMass, it is really important that we are using that formula. So it's realistic on what students know if they have a chance or they don't have a chance. And I would say that many colleges are very similar to what UMass. It's probably more so, like the numbers might be slightly different, but it's not, there's not a huge difference from what I'm hearing from other private schools.
So a follow up to that, right? What would be the reasons for choose? What would be some of choosing that that calculator? Is it because we have so many students going to UMass and other state schools?
Yes.
Is that the primary? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom?
Good evening. Kate, thank you. First, thank you for the continued work, right? That was the promise, and you've fulfilled bringing that together, bringing the school council together, and getting all that done.
And it was, I have to share, it was a really rich discussion. We met for, we're only supposed to meet for an hour, and we met for a full hour and a half in our December meeting. It was a really rich discussion.
That's good, and I would expect it to be, because this, I think, is maybe more of a controversial topic than maybe you thought it was, or maybe than the staff thought it might be. You know, I look at this, and I see that we're giving students, for example, an extra point for a B+ or a C+ or a D+, but we're not giving them extra points for an A+. So we're not rewarding excellence if we do this. Even if UMass has this as their standard, we're choosing to not reward excellence by taking that 0.3 points away from the top of the curve that we're not taking away from the other portions of the curve. I hope that makes sense as a question. Does that, I mean, is there a reason why we feel like it's okay to reward the B+, the C+, and the D+, but not the A+?
Can I answer that, Kate?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the UMass system. So when we put in the A+ a few years ago, the GPAs jumped up drastically because there were a decent amount of students who were getting A+. And then that affected, like, their GPAs weren't really matching all that well. So if the UMass systems don't do it, and we have such a high percentage of students are doing it, a lot of colleges are not recognizing the A+, but the A+ are still on the transcript, so the colleges can still see it. I think it's important to remember that the GPA is just a number, and what we really should be focusing on is the students' academic success in each of their classes and how they're doing in their overall transcript and their progression from freshman year to senior year, and not so much on a number. The number just represents the overall, like, grades, but that's such a small percentage of what's important in a student. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think that was the rationale many years ago, but when we saw like this big jump in GPAs, and it's not really reflective of what the colleges are doing. So I think it's important to, it's there, because we didn't have A+ many years ago. So I definitely want the A+ to stay there, because I think there's a difference between getting a 95 and a 99 in a class. So I think it's there. It's just not represented in the number. And I think staying as close to the UMass system or using the UMass system is the most important thing as far as that number.
So I get first of all, I get and 100% agree that a number does not define the person or the child, the student, right? I don't agree, I'll just put it out there, that the differentiation that comes from an A+ versus an A is something we should ignore. Because there's also the conversation about who becomes the salutatorian, who becomes the valedictorian at some point in time as well. And if A's and A+ give you the same score, that differentiation becomes that much harder and generally that is a number driven decision, right? So it seems like we're removing that ability for that student that's getting the 97, the 98, the 99 to differentiate themselves from the student who's getting the 95. And at that point you're splitting hairs, right? But when you have students at that level, that's what you're doing, is splitting hairs, is trying to find that difference. I took the time to go look at other schools as well. UMass is certainly a good system, and yes, many of our students go there, but I feel like we're missing out on the Stanfords, the Rices, the Columbias that still use the A+ as well, even within their own schools, right? You still get a different score at Stanford, at Rice, at Columbia for an A+ than you do for an A. And it feels like we're coalescing down as opposed to trying to work to bring people up, for lack of a better way to say it. And it's not even a personal conversation necessarily as much as it's more of to me, it's an excellence conversation or not, right? And I think we should be striving for excellence as opposed to not. And yes, a number is a number, Lena. I get your point there. But there is a differentiation that occurs with that number, or not if we don't allow for that number appropriately. And I still come back to, we give the 0.3 for B+, we don't give the 0.3 for A+. Why? That seems inequitable if we want to talk about equity, right? If you can get an 88 and get a 0.3 point more than you get for an 85, why is it not the same for a 98 versus a 95? And when it goes to publishing out things to UMass or working with UMass or others, the calculation is a relatively straightforward calculation. If you need to make the adjustment, you make the adjustment. But when it comes to who's in National Honor Society, who's the salutatorian, who's the valedictorian, that the top of the class conversation is where this becomes an important conversation. And yes, there's other things that go into that too. I want to add just a couple other things here. There's this sense, I think it was even communicated, that the concept of decile, the concept of these scores leads to stress. And I think it very well may. I'm not saying it doesn't. Students are students. Everybody deals with it differently. Every child's going to deal with it differently. But we support and honor competition in the athletic field, and we give honors for athletic, accomplishments, but we're taking away an honor or a portion of an honor for an academic accomplishment. And that to me seems the antithesis of what we should be doing from a school perspective. And then finally, I would say, and there are questions in the Q&A for this, Chuck, too, so I can read them or somebody else can. That's fine with me. Are we, Kate, are we 100% sure there was unanimous agreement to these changes in the school council?
Yes. I don't know what else you want me to say. The school council voted, and we were all on a Zoom screen, and I asked, we had very rich discussions. At the end of the day, I said, I asked for like a thumbs up, thumbs down vote, and I got thumbs up unanimously.
Okay. I have had conversations with school council members. They don't have the same recollection, which is why I'm concerned about it. Maybe they understood that thumbs up as something else. I don't think there's any ill intent or anything else along those lines, miscommunication or something like that. But I was surprised when it was listed as unanimous, and so I asked the question of a few of them, and they didn't convey that. In fact, they said there was no vote, so they were surprised.
I'm sorry, I beg to differ.
Okay.
At the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
I asked a very specific question, whether do people support the changes? Yes, thumbs up or no. Do people support the changes?
Okay.
Answer was yes.
Okay. Well, okay. So it's not the news I got, so I think there's a miscommunication there. So it would be good to see if the minutes of the meeting or something, if it was recorded appropriately.
Yeah, I actually recorded the meeting.
Okay, that'd be great. You know, Chuck, if there's other questions from the committee, then we'll come back to the live Q&A.
Yeah, we will. And John Parks had a question.
Yeah, Lynn, let's go back to the GPA. How many colleges actually calculate their own when they receive a student transcript?
I'm going to say a lot of colleges. I can't give you a number because there's 4,000 colleges in the country. So I can't really give you a number of that. But I will say that a lot of them do recalculate. But definitely not all of them, but many of them do.
Okay, so by going to this UMass system, it's standardizing for our state schools. And those schools that are going to recalculate are going to recalculate because they're getting that student transcript anyways.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. Tom, did you
Sure.
go to the Q&A?
Sure, I'll go to it in order. Jeff Coram Ridge Road. Isn't it early to say not calculating and communicating rank or decile has proven to be a benefit for students in the college admissions process, per the overview, since only early admission results are known now? Has it been a significant benefit, or just that there doesn't appear to be a significant detriment?
If he's talking specifically about Reading Memorial High School, then he's right. It's too early to say if there's been a benefit or not. But I can say that we're behind the times. Arlington High School over 10 years ago switched this model. I was there. And what we saw was a drastic increase in the college admissions in year one, and it has stayed that way. When majority of other schools are not doing a decile rank or an actual GPA at an actual rank, we're behind the times. So I think as a school system, we have to figure out what's important to us. Is it a number in the competition of academics of who's going to be number one and number two in the class? Or are we going to really just say and do what we are talking about? We place an emphasis on social emotional learning. Is it just that we're good on paper, or is it that we're going to actually do what we're saying we're going to do? So I fully support this, and I will have a hard time working in a school system that can't put social emotional ahead of academic competition. I'm sorry.
Lynn, I could not have said that better. Thank you. I think this is it's a philosophical conversation that we're having, and what do we value? And I think it's wrapped up 100% in our portrait of the graduate, and what we believe as a school community. And I will concur with Lynna.
We have students and parents who are asking us, what are the classes that we can take so my child can be number one? We have students who are asking, what's the highest number of AP classes a student has taken? Because I want to be higher than that. And then you know what else we're seeing behind the scenes that's not really reported? The students who are not sleeping, the students who are having to see, an increase in the number of students who are seeing therapists, the number of students who are plagiarizing and hoping that they're not going to get caught because they simply don't have enough time to do all their work. Now, am I saying that all our top students are doing that? By no means am I saying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is that I've been a guidance counselor for over 20 years. And being a guidance counselor now is drastically different than where it was 20 years ago. And what's the major difference? The competition, the stress that's on our students. Students are now in high school expected to do what college students used to do. Middle school students have the pressure that used to be high school. Elementary is, the same as middle school. It's all trickling down. And at some point, we have to decide, are we a district that is going to continue to allow this to happen? Or can we make these minor changes to better our students' social emotional well-being while still emphasizing the importance of academic success. I still want students to take the most challenging courses. I still want students to get A+ if they're able to do that. But I think that there are ways that we can celebrate academic excellence without it being the number one in the class, the number two, or the detriment of our students. So it's something that I feel strongly about. It's something that I am talking all the time with guidance directors about. When we have colleges who are saying they don't even look at the decile, I think it's pretty clear what we should be doing. Sorry that I have a strong.
Okay, that's okay.
We hired you for your strong opinion, right, Lena? You for your expertise. I guess. I mean,
don't ask me a question that you don't want an answer to. So
you and I are the same in that regard. I think some of this committee knows the answer to that one too. I guess where I'm, and there's other questions here, but I mean, just to answer that from my perspective is, I fully agree. Social emotional health is critical and is important. Where I'm at a disagreement is that it's one or the other, right? And I'm at a disagreement that a 0.3 for an A+ fundamentally changes the social emotional health of somebody. They're still going to go for the AP classes. They're still going to go for the the honors classes. That doesn't change the equation for them. What it changes is the small reward for getting potentially to that. There are some kids who do or are driven by being that valedictorian, that salutatorian, and the differentiation between student A and student B, that's what it changes. It doesn't really change whether they're going to take that many classes or not take that many classes. In fact, we have it in our goals to have more students taking AP classes over the next 3 years, right? So we're not counter to our goals by saying we should be rewarding those students that are taking those classes that are then getting the additional point for the A+ or a 0.3 for the A+. I don't think it's a juxtaposition. I don't think it's A or B. I think we can achieve both while rewarding those students that are taking that extra step.
Is it our goal that we want more students taking AP courses, or is it, and I'm truly asking this question because I don't know the answer. Is it that we want more students to take AP classes, or we want more diversity and we want more exposure for students, so there's not so many obstacles for students to get into the AP classes?
Lynn, it's the latter.
It's diversity, yes, but it's also those kids passing it, yes, right? But it doesn't mean that we're going to do one to replace the other, right? If you're going to increase the number to increase the diversity, that should be increasing the number and not lowering the number from the other side to increase the diversity percentage, right? So if you're going to increase the diversity, you should increase the number overall.
Right, but we're talking about students, number of students versus number of exams, two very different things. And so what happens is that I think people are focused on the number of exams that students are taking, and what you're talking about is the number of students. And so what we see with the stress is that the number of students are just increasing the number of exams they're taking. So it looks like, when you get the AP scholars and you get the AP, I don't know, Dr. Doherty can talk more about this, like when our school gets recognized for the number of students, it's not number of students, the number of exams. That's what the award is the number of exams, not necessarily the number of students. So I don't know. I just want to be careful and make sure that there's that distinction there.
It's a fair distinction to make. A couple more points I think that are in the Q&A. Jeff Coram, Ridge Road. How does a college in a different state know if a student's GPA is good versus all students at Rmhs get straight A's if no decile information is provided? I understand that Umass probably sees enough applications to know a student's GPA stacks up.
So every school has to give a college a school profile. So in the school profile is a chart that shows the distribution of the GPAs from the highest to the lowest. And that recommendation came after talking to many colleges and getting examples from them of what they find most helpful from the schools that don't provide a rank. So it's in our school profile.
Okay, so and that goes to states, schools outside of UMass, outside of Massachusetts as well.
That goes with every transcript that is sent out. It's attached to the transcript, the letter of recommendation for every student in every school they apply to.
Okay, now we have a couple of comments that are a little bit of juxtaposed, so it shows that the confusion that's out there potentially in the school council. And I'll read it as it is, and some of it is a continuous thought, so we'll go from there. It says, this is Marianne Downey. It says, hi, there's school council and Kate. I'm trying to follow this listing because the school council, we definitely had very significant, rich discussions on the changes, but I do not recall taking a vote. I thought it was still being discussed and not yet being finally presented. We heard the faculty voted on this, and we were all hearing about proposed changes to be put into the draft, but I think we're not aware it was the final draft going for approval. That is, I cannot recall there being a vote by the school council for this to go final draft for the SC. This thing, I thought.
Just jump in. I'm really sorry. I have the purpose for meeting school council in December. I was very clear, at least in my mind, and I will certainly go back to the film because I recorded it. But I specifically asked, are we okay with, as a group, are we okay with these changes? Because I'm on the docket for school committee.
Yeah.
So I have a completely, different, I would never have moved forward with this if I didn't feel confident that the group agreed.
Yeah, so I think in the Q and
my head around that right now.
I think in the Q&A, Mary, that question was from Marianne Downing. She subsequently said that the minutes did reflect a vote was taken, right?
No, she just said just so that we can be sure the minutes reflect a vote. That was part of the rest of her question. Is it possible that to table this approval so we can make sure the minutes reflected it? But then she also wrote to clarify, Kate did ask, were we okay with the changes? But I don't think we were all viewing it the same way. Supporting the changes means we would support the idea of changes, but of course we would need to see the proposed changes written before to represent the intent, just like a policy changes. Perhaps I'm confused on this. And in fairness to Kate as well, Michelle Hopkinson, who's a health and wellness on the council, I'm on the council that discussed the changes, the GPA changes, and agreed to the changes, and believed everyone else did, including students. So there's definitely communication or misunderstanding amongst members appropriately. So it sounds like the intent was to ask that we're ready to go and it's good to go, and that was not understood by all parties.
I don't know how to respond to that because that was the expectation that you thumbs up. Are you good with these changes? Yes, and it was a yes.
Okay. Okay. One more question or point by Jeff Corum. If you remove the 0.3 for A+, won't you have more students wanting to take more AP classes to get the AP boost rather than taking honors and working for the A+?
I'm not sure. Linda, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know yet. I don't think that's, I think we've seen a number of students definitely trying to stretch themselves and take honors classes. I think I'd have to wait and see. Linda, I don't know if you have a different thought.
I don't have an answer to that.
Okay. And just to finish the last topic, Michelle Hopkinson just wrote in again. I believe we were discussing those specific changes. I agree with Kate.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from Sean?
Yeah, so I just want to say, appreciate Dr. Corum's question. I don't think it's useful to try and do this game theory exercise of what are students going to do. I think we should do what we think is the right thing. Lena, you were giving these examples of some of the behaviors you see from ultra competitive students who are fighting and clawing to be 1 versus 2 or 7 versus 8 or whatever. you know, I went to a high school which at the time was ranked like 6th or 7th in the country, and me and 3 of my friends in freshman year petitioned the school board of the county to allow us to replace the required gym class with another academic class because we were thinking about this kind of thing. And the behaviors you described resonate very strongly with me. And frankly, by the time I got to college, I was burnt out, and it was not a very good first year or so in college. And so the appeal to sort of the social emotional wellness that you make, and the argument for that in favor of, you know, competition for competition's sake is, it resonates really strongly with me, and I support these changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just think it's important to know that we don't make these decisions lightly. We don't wake up one morning and say, how are we going to change things? These are discussions that we've had over the years and what we're seeing. And we take our jobs really seriously, and we always have the student's best interests. But when it's not just one student, it's all our students. These are like, you know, as Grant Hightower said, these are all our babies. These are the students that we take care of, and we feel we need to take care of all of them and look at all of their best interest. And so I just want to emphasize that to the public, that these are not decisions that are made lightly, and we think about things from all different angles. But when a decision's made and it's done with the utmost confidence on our part that we're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Lynn. Aaron?
I'm actually on the Parker School Council, and we had a somewhat similar conversation this past week about grades and about the pressure that kids today are putting on themselves, and how it's steering them away from what we want them to be focusing on, which is, you know, the joy and the love of learning, and figuring out what their passions are and what they want to pursue, and getting more caught up and hung up on a grade and what we attach to those grades and those letters. So it's just interesting having this come up in the same week. And I just want to say that for me, it's important that we're offering, you know, diverse options and choices for our students, that we're able to challenge our students where they're at. And I think that the reward comes in them being able to do that and pursue that, and they can still get an A+ on their transcript if that's the grade that they earn. It feels less important to me that be reflected in something like a GPA. You know, similar to Sean, I like viscerally remember the intensity of high school and the competition, and that drive, and it was all about the grades, and I think it kind of drove a lot of kids to a level of intensity that I don't wish upon our adolescents. So I appreciate all your insight into where these changes came from, to why you're proposing making them, and I'm in support of them.
Thank you.
Chuck, we have 2 more comments in the Q&A.
Yeah, I just went over there.
Okay. First one, Michelle Greenwald, Strawberry Hill Lane. Hello, I'm another school council member, and I did not realize we were taking a formal vote. We did have a rich discussion, but there was no motion second, so maybe I just didn't realize it was a formal vote without those. And then we have another point from Jeff Corum. It said, thank you, Lena Williams, for the explanation about the profile. When I glanced at the profile for this year, I did not notice the GPA histogram was not binned by Decile.
It's not by Decile, it's by GPA.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee? Thank you, Kate and Lena. Great job.
Chuck, there is a motion for
Yeah.
this. I don't know if you want to read it. And I guess I'll read it, and then I have a couple of questions on the effective dates that I didn't ask before. So the motion is move to approve the revisions made to the academic section of the RMHS student handbook as outlined in Mrs. Boynton's memorandum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, Tom?
So I guess the question here is really, are we approving steps in the handbook towards next year's academic handbook, or are we approving updates to this year's academic handbook? I thought from the earlier discussion that there was going to be steps, we were going to see improvements, but not that we were going to approve changes midstream in the year for this year from an academic perspective. But yet it seems as though the way it's written is that it would be effective immediately after our approval. So Mrs. Boynton or Mrs. Williams, if you had a view on what the status from your perspective is.
I guess I had a different understanding. I thought that we were, because we didn't get the deep dive in the way that we had wanted last year for this year. It was my understanding that the changes would be implemented and incorporated within this year's handbook. But that might not be the understanding of the school committee. I think, I would be supportive of some flexibility. I do think for our students, I think transitioning the transcript to a full year instead of semester-based credit transcript, I think that is a benefit for our students and our current seniors. Lena, weigh in if you want to, if you want to add anything in there. I think the GPA, it's not for our current seniors. It would be for the graduating classes of beginning with 2022. Senior, it would not be appropriate to implement for seniors for this year. And if you look at I think the implementation date, we'd be able to communicate and roll it in really after the senior college process has already happened. Lynn, is that?
As far as the semester piece, is that what you're asking?
No, the GPA. But the semester piece, we had talked about that to have the transcript reflect just the year-end grade.
Yes.
Even starting with this year's seniors.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
For a cleaner looking transcript.
Correct. I don't think that's going to make a difference for this year's seniors. The colleges want the first quarter grades, they want the mid-year grades, and then the final grades. So when the final transcript comes out, they've already been accepted. They just want to make sure that they graduated. So I don't think that makes a difference. We have a difficult system that we're using, so we can't phase in things for our students. It's one of those things that you kind of have to like jump in. We can't say that we'll start this with, current sophomores and then the juniors and seniors will do something different. Like once we implement it, you have to do it for all 4 grades.
So if that's the case, does it make sense to say this is for next school year then, and so that it's easier to implement over the summer as opposed to implementing it midstream in the middle of the year?
I'm fine with that. We did ask our tech integrator, Chuck Strout, about that, and his recommendation was sometime in the spring because the seniors they're done. But if you wanted to push it to the after this school year, I think that would be appropriate as well.
Does that mean that it will change for the GPA or just for the final grade on the transcript? Are we talking about 2 different things, or are you talking about all the changes?
I think it's all the changes.
I raised the question because that was my understanding when we had the conversation before. Maybe I just misunderstood as well. So I'm just one of 6. So if the other 5 don't have that same understanding, then it is what it is, right? But when we had the conversation before, we were going to see, it was like a preview to me when we were talking about it, right? A preview of the changes to see the progress that's being made throughout the year to prepare us for, July or August of next year when we have the final approval. So that was my interpretation of that conversation from before. But again, I'm just one person, so that's why I was asking the question.
So just for the GPA wise, for our current juniors, it will be confusing if we're not able to give them a GPA in January. So the juniors are about to start their process in January. And so a part of that is they have their GPA. They're going to want to know what their GPA is that they're using for their applications. So I think that's where Chuck Strout was recommending that we do it in the spring, because once we get past the first semester, the seniors will have their transcripts sent out to the colleges. Then we can calculate the junior GPA so they understand where they fall on things. If you wait until later on in the year, after this year's over, then the juniors are going to have one GPA that they're working off of. And then at the end of the year, they're going to get a different GPA, which is fine as long as we communicate that. But I think it's kind of confusing for them if they're working off of different GPAs.
Carla, you're on mute.
I'm mute.
Go ahead, John Doherty. You had your hand up.
No, I was just going to make a suggestion that there are things that sound like need to be implemented this year in preparation for next year. And so I think to allow the staff to be able to do that, where prudent, I think that's probably the best approach.
I was going to basically say the same thing. Look at that, John. I was going to basically say the same thing. I think that's a building decision, and we don't want to stress anybody out and stress any students out. So I'm completely comfortable with the decision you guys make and the easiest way to kind of implement it and roll it forward. So thank you.
Yeah. Any other, just Tom?
One more question, I think, or request. In section F, grading system and associated honors, there's a section on there about note on incomplete grades. And it says work is incomplete because of illness or other verified reason. Incompletes must be made within 2 weeks at the end of the quarter. I'm thinking about a situation where a child or a student is gone for 3 months and they have to make it up in 2 weeks. And that seems inequitable to me. But I see you're shaking your head like that's not the case, right? But the document says that, so that's why I'm asking the question about what the plan is there.
If the student's out for 3 months, say with a significant medical issue, that's where a year-long credit earning transcript would help that child, because if it's, let's just say it's a significant medical issue and the child has to be out, we would want to be able to medically waive that quarter that child missed, and really hone in and focus in on essential concepts to get that child back up to where they need to be. They would likely transition in through our stepping stone program. So that's a whole other issue than a student who has been regularly attending school but is just behind on their work and is missing a test or a quiz, or both a test and a quiz and some homeworks. That's a completely different and much more critical situation that we would take a different approach on. So that actually does stand to, I think one piece of information that is not in this handbook yet, and I'm glad that you raised that question, is the issue of medically waiving a quarter, as well as information about the stepping stone program. And so I think that could be something that, in a future, maybe in the springtime, I was thinking the next time I'd come for a handbook revision would be sometime in the March timeframe. That could be some wording that I propose to the school committee around that.
Thank you, Kate. Any other comments, questions? We're ready.
Chuck, real quick. Well, there seems to be there seems to be a lack of understanding or agreement that the school council actually voted on it. In that regard, it seems weird from my perspective that we're voting on it if the school council is not all on the same page that they did vote on it. So from that perspective, I would petition that we not even make the motion if you're open to it, but you're the chair, that we table it until that is officially closed from an outstanding question perspective. But ultimately, I'm just one person again, so.
Well, I think we had kind of a divide, right? And we had equal numbers saying that they thought they did vote on, or they did vote on it, versus didn't know whether they voted on it. And, you know, we have the high school principal telling us that there was a vote, and, you know, I believe her. So, you know, I think we should, you know, I think we should move forward with the motion and vote on this. So that's, I'll listen to anyone else on the committee that disagrees with that or doesn't.
Chuck, I'm in agreement with you. I think with everything that was published, everything that was said, I think we're ready to move forward. We've got a date for juniors coming up that's very significant in what they're looking at for colleges, where this needs to start taking place soon. So I think a vote needs to be done.
The one other thing I'd say is that those juniors have gone through 2.5 years with a grade scale that they're used to. They probably have calculated, in many cases, their own GPAs. It's just the formality of the final school calculation, and now we're changing it on them halfway through their junior year. So if we're going to change it, it would almost seem like we should change it for those students who have not had more than half, and that includes, you know, many, it includes a lot of the students, but those juniors have had 2/3, you know, more than half of their academic time with the understanding of the grade scale that was published before, both in this document as well as in the course of studies document.
Can I just remind everyone, the GPA scale, let's not just focus on the top of the class. Let's remember that we are also changing this GPA scale to help our students who may not be in the highest level. Those students are just as important as our top students. And as of right now, those students are at a disadvantage. I'm having a hard time with this conversation.
So, I mean, I guess, Lynn, I hear you. I'm not trying to knock that, I guess. And this is where there's a disalignment between the program of studies and the handbook, right? The program of studies doesn't even list the college preparatory 4.0 scale that I agree is punitive, right? It doesn't even list it. It lists the advanced placement, the honors, and the strong prep, basically. That one, you know, has the normal 4.0 scale versus the punitive 4.0 scale, for lack of a better way to say it, where there's a 4.3 for an A+ for that level.
The strong college prep does not
exist
because we collapsed levels, right?
Yep.
And we've renamed or are in the process of renaming classes, and so it's really college preparatory at this point, because there's no need for strong college prep because we don't have the other college prep, if that makes sense. So the program definitely needs to be, and we're working to update it for this next year. To your point about the juniors, if our current student management system, which is Rediker Admin Plus, allowed us to roll this in, that would have been our preference, quite frankly. In my prior district, I was in Bedford, and we made this change back when I was an assistant principal, probably going on, I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago now. And the platform that that Bedford used allowed for a roll-in, a phase-in of the, and they went to the UMass GPA scale. The system allowed for a gradual roll-in, beginning with the upcoming freshman class, which is what I thought we could do with our system. We cannot. It's an all or nothing switch, and I think it has to be sort of lumped with our current juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. If we could roll it in, that would honestly be my preference with the next incoming or this current 9th grade class, or even potentially next year's 9th grade. But we're not able to do that with the current system that we have.
That's good information to have, Mrs. Boynton. Thank you. I mean, the program of studies listed as standard weighting. It doesn't list it as strong college or college, right? And it listed that as the 4.3, 4.0 scale. So that's what students saw when they came in for the year. That's what they registered with, et cetera, which is okay. So
this approval gets made, that would have to get amended as well.
Yep.
Okay, we ready for the vote? Aaron? Aaron?
Sorry, we're voting to accept the changes to the handbook?
Yes.
Okay. Aye.
Tom?
Nay.
John?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Thank you, Kate and Lena. Good job.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to do the budget presentation now.
Yes.
Great. Are we all set?
We are.
Perfect. John has graciously offered to help me with the slides. Didn't want to tempt technology today. We've lost power a couple of times, so if I suddenly drop off, no offense meant, just means I lost my internet again. Similar to what we've done in prior years, we are taking this opportunity tonight just to level set the committee, provide a high-level overview. The goal tonight is not to talk about any specific figures or dollar amounts or any of that. It's really just to go through a high-level process. That way, when we move into January, we can really focus on the numbers and the budget. So tonight, what we will be going over is a review of the school structure, just to remind everybody how we build the budget process, our various methods of communication, especially in light of most of this is being done remotely. So we do plan to make sure we're updating people through our communication channels. A reminder of what the calendar of events are over the next couple of months, and then open it up to any questions that folks have. So the first thing that we wanted to do was a high-level review of the budget structure. And just to remind folks, high level, what the operating budget is meant to cover, which for us, the largest part is obviously the salaries, where about 86% of the budget is typically salaries, materials, supplies, and services needed to operate the school district. We usually talk about that the revenue sources, the largest part are the property taxes, state aid, excise taxes, fees, and occasionally sale of land, as well as the utilization of free cash that the Finance Committee decides upon. We do remind folks that the property taxes can only increase 2.5% per year, plus any new growth, unless the community decides to do a Proposition 2.5 override. And another area that we talk about at this process, as well as throughout the year as we give updates, is that any unspent or unencumbered funds at the end of the fiscal year are returned to the town's general fund. We're not allowed to carry over unspent funds from one year to the next. Just to go over a couple of the other types of funds that we have, There is the capital, which I'm not sure if folks tuned into the select board meeting that they had on Monday night, that the town manager did go over high-level capital plan in some of his proposals. Typically, the town targets about 5% of the operating budget to be geared towards capital. That percentage can shift depending on what the overall needs of the community are. The capital plan is meant to do a lot of one-time improvement projects, such as roof replacements. We saw in the prior year, we had the turf replacement and a lot of feasibility studies. So that would include the work that was done in the prior year and continuing into this year on our enrollment studies and looking at potential elementary school solutions. It also covers other types of one-time capital purchases, such as fire trucks, the modular classroom that we purchased last year, and the capital plan also supported the security study and the security project that is currently underway, as well as some of the performance management contracting that is done. Capital funds are not used to support the general operating needs of the district. They are separate and distinct funds, and they cannot be commingled or utilized for different purposes. The other types of funds that we have are the grants and revolving accounts. The grants tend to be the state and federal funds, and we do have a slide a little bit later to talk about those. And then the revolving accounts are typically generated by user fees, tuitions, ticket sales, grants, or in certain instances, donations. And any of those types of funds must be used for the specific purpose the funds were provided for. So whether it's full day kindergarten, rise tuition, we also are not able to use those funds for purposes other than what they were donated for. The next slide, which we do put a lot of information in the budget book when we publish that as well, talks about the basic structure of the school budget. It's comprised of 5 cost centers: the administration, regular day, special education. The district-wide program is where we combine 4 of the smaller cost centers, which are athletics, extracurricular, health services, networking, technology, infrastructure, and maintenance, and then the school custodians. And as a reminder, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the town core was separated from the schools and moved over to the town. So what's left in the schools is purely the custodial budgets. Utilities and those items are over on the town core side. The school budget is approved by this committee on an annual basis, and it is approved at the cost center level. So the committee does approve the total budget for each cost center. Once that's approved, we actually do not transfer funds between any of the cost centers unless it is pre-approved by the school committee. We can transfer funds within each cost center, but not amongst the cost centers. Once the school committee has approved it, it does go back to the town manager and then FinCom, and then at town meeting, the town meeting members approve the bottom line budget for the school committee. That's typically in the April timeframe, but as we all remember, last year it was actually not until June due to reschedules because of the COVID-19 pandemic. What I want to go through here is a quick overview of each of the cost centers and what they're comprised of. And again, the main purpose of tonight is to go over some of these fundamentals so that we can free up that time in January to really focus on the budget numbers themselves. The administration cost center is actually one of the smallest cost centers within the school department budget. It is made up of the central office staff, as well as all of the administrative assistants. It does cover our legal and audit fees. One of the areas that we do anticipate having some changes going forward is due to the nature of a lot of the grants that we are receiving this year. We have been notified to anticipate some pretty significant federal audits coming once those grants close out. Administration also covers all of the payroll processing for all of the district employees, And one of the areas that we have been spending a considerable amount of time on this year is we also do manage all of the unemployment claims that come through. And unfortunately, as folks have probably seen and heard in the news, there has been a significant uptick in accessing and reporting unemployment fraud. So that in and of itself has almost become a full-time job for some of us within the administration department. We also cover all of the employee and recruiting and hiring, and that goes hand in hand with the payroll piece. We have data and information management. District telecommunication services fall under that. We have the annuity matching contribution is budgeted out of the administration cost center, and that covers the RTA contract for matching contribution we make for teachers. It also covers all of the professional development and memberships for central administration, as well as our miscellaneous supplies and expenses and any postage that's needed for all the mailings we do. The regular day cost center is our largest cost center. It includes all of the building administrators and secretaries, our regular education teachers, our reg ed tutors, reg ed paraprofessionals, school psychologists, guidance counselors, ELL and instruction specialists. It includes most of our mentors and stipends, so our teacher mentors, leadership stipends. The curriculum coordinators and data coach are also funded out of this cost center. The curriculum materials and associated professional development. All of our substitutes, long-term and short-terms for teachers and paras. We have our mandatory student transportation, which is for students who live greater than 2 miles in grades K to 6. It includes the instructional materials and supplies for all of our buildings. So all of the principals have their per pupil budgets that are part of this. It includes instructional technology and equipment. So that includes all of the replacement laptops, computers, smart boards for the district. Testing, assessments, software, and materials. And it also includes our Zoom licenses, our office renewals. So basically all of the items that it takes to run the day-to-day of the buildings falls within regular day. The next one is special education, which would be the second largest next to regular day cost center. That includes all of the special education administrators, which also includes the team chairs and secretaries. It includes the special education teachers as well as the special education professionals. It includes the therapeutic specialists. Our ESY program staff and expenses are also included in that. And one of the larger expenses is typically associated with the transportation and any other out of district tuition for students that are outplaced that attend ESY. We have legal services. We've also continue to try to look to ways to make sure we're funding the appropriate professional development. Dr. Stice and I work very closely on that each year to make sure we're targeting professional development to budget each year. It includes home and hospital tutoring, consultative and evaluative services, adaptive equipment and technology, testing and assessment software, materials and services, instructional materials and supplies. And the part to note on here is these are all items that are specific to the special education population. Anything that is utilized between both special ed and regular ed is budgeted within the regular day cost center. The largest items within the special education outside of the salaries would be the transportation and out of district tuition. Next are the district-wide programs, which are the 4 relatively smaller cost centers. We have athletics, which that covers a portion of Tom Zaya. His salary is actually split between 3 different areas. It includes the officials, event detail, and crowd monitors for all of our athletic events. We do budget for equipment and maintenance of our various equipment, whether it's the hockey uniforms and other items. It also includes facility rentals, which the majority of that is for pool and ice arena, transportation and supplies, as well as various memberships for the athletics programs. The extracurricular activity We work with Anna Wentlet very closely on this. This does include a portion of Tom Zaya as well. It includes all of the advisor stipends. It has fees, memberships, transportation, supplies, and equipment. A lot of the extracurricular is funded through the revolving accounts, but there are some residual expenses that do run through that we budget for each year. Health services, that is our director of nursing and school nurses. It covers substitutes for when the nurses are out. We also have a school physician that is included in there, and it does include our medical supplies and equipment. And the equipment is typically our AED machines that we have throughout all of our buildings. We have some that fall under health services and some that fall under athletics. So we are constantly working to make sure we're cycling through the inventory, replacing when necessary, as well as maintaining all of the equipment. The networking and technology infrastructure, that is Julian Carr's area. That includes himself and the technicians. We budget the internet service, software licensing. We also do all of the programming and maintenance for the clocks and bells throughout the district. We also have our network infrastructure, telecommunication repairs and maintenance, and as well as some supplies that go with that. One of the areas to note in here is this is an area that we do see increases and decreases over time based upon our various renewal cycles, which oftentimes is tied to capital projects where we may have an item and then 3 years later we're renewing the maintenance on that item. So there may be years where it's higher and lower depending on our renewal cycle. And then the school custodians, that has the custodial manager, the custodial staff. We do have a part-time courier who helps out by bringing all of our mail across the entire district as well as to the town. It covers all of the custodial equipment and supplies. We fund all of the radios for the district through here, and we do have the cleaning services contract for Rmhs and Coolidge that is also part of here. We do like to remind folks some of the items that are not included within the operating budget. We do try to maintain a lot of these to be self-supporting. Food services is supported solely through their revolving account. We have the extended day before and after school programs, as well as community education, which includes our driver's ed program. We oftentimes have field trip expenses, additional and hardware purchases that we do, non-mandatory student transportation, which is also a fee-based program, some of our enrichment programs, student supplies. We do have coaches for some of our programs that are funded via donations, as well as donations for advisors for the drama bands and other activities, additional tutor support, as well as a portion of athletics, extracurricular, preschool, and full day kindergarten. For grants, this is a high-level overview of the various grants that we have received this year. The top 3 that we have listed here are 3 different sources of funding that have been received, all tied to COVID relief funds. The school reopening grant and the school meal program grant are expiring on December 30th, so those are one-time grants. We have not heard that they are being extended or that any additional funding has been approved yet. We are keeping our eyes open for any additional information that does come out. The CARES Act, which is the ESSER funding that we have, that actually is a full year grant that we have 36 months to spend. We're targeting to spend it over the 24. They do give you a 3rd year to spend it, but they caution you to try to spend it within the first 2 years. That also is a one-time grant. We do not anticipate that grant being renewed. Our regular grants that we do apply for each year include the METCO grant. We have the special education circuit breaker, which the funding of that is tied to the state's budget. So one thing we have been able to do is we have a year's reserve that we use. So we are actually using last year's circuit breaker this year so that we can budget fact certain when we are going through this process, which is a great place to be in. And we also have all of our entitlement grants, the 3 title grants, and then the 2 special ed IDEA grants. The next chart, which I have to admit is definitely an eye chart now that I'm looking at it on the screen. This is a summary of all of the grants. What we have done for the committee is each of these grants has been provided to the committee as we receive notification of funding to ensure that the committee is accepting the funding. We do have one on the consent agenda for this evening, which is the COVID school meal program. We actually just received notification on Friday that we are receiving this funding. It's based upon meal distribution since April, and we do have to have that completely allocated and spent by December 30th. So it is a pretty quick turnaround, but they did just notify us on Friday. So I've been working very closely with Danielle to make sure we're allocating funds accordingly. And the rationale for that grant was a lot of districts are struggling with their food services revolving account. So this was to provide relief to the revolving account, specifically related to preparing and distributing food during the pandemic. But the committee has seen each of these, and all of them except for that new item have been accepted by the committee. And we will keep the committee updated as we go. We continue to work closely with any other sources of funding. I know Chris Kelly and I have talked about grants that have come up to look at them to decide whether it makes sense for the district to apply. Danielle and I applied for 2 grants at the end of November. We just found out today we did not qualify for them. So we are definitely putting the time and effort into looking at all of the various funding. We're also working very closely with the town on the COVID grant because there are 3 sources of funding available. There's the CARES Act that the town received, the COVID grant we received, and then Chief Burns works on the FEMA and MEMA reimbursement. So we are all working very closely together to make sure that we are putting the right expenses on the right grant and looking to be as strategic as we can to ensure that we're getting the maximum reimbursements that we can. Just a quick overview of the budget process. As a reminder that the town manager establishes the available revenues in the October timeframe. We meet several times with the town manager throughout this process to talk about accommodated costs. For us, that is our special ed transportation and out of district placement. So we work very closely with the town manager to try to determine what a reasonable budget would be. What we do remind folks of is this process actually starts in the August and September timeframe, which is almost a full 2 years before we actually know what the actual expenses would be. We also at that point discuss any community priorities. As we were developing the budgets this year, the decision was made not to include COVID-related expenses as part of the baseline budget. We will be revisiting this as we go out throughout the budget process over the next few months. At this point, none of us truly can predict what FY22 is going to look like from an ongoing COVID expense standpoint. But similar to last year, if it is determined at a future date that expenses are continuing, that would be a separate discussion that we would anticipate having with the school committee as well as finance committee to determine the best means to budget for that. Once all of the accommodated cost and community priorities are determined, that's subtracted from the available revenue to determine what the operating budgets would be. And then it is split such that the school obtains about 64% of that. What we do is then when we're building up the budget, we always take a look at what our district improvement plan is and what the focuses are. So as we've discussed over the last couple of meetings, There are specific areas in the district improvement plan. Special education and regular education literacy practices is a big theme that is coming up. Equity and social justice practices, ensuring we're hiring a more diverse workforce, which we're very excited to have Kerry joining us that will be helping us with that. School safety from both a physical and a psychological standpoint is always key. Student engagement and social emotional learning are always key as we're looking at what we need to add to the budget. We always keep in mind maintaining the class sizes in our K-2 classes. We always strive to maintain the 18 to 22 students, and that becomes important when we're looking at space as well as staffing. And then we always look to make sure we preserve the middle school interdisciplinary model. Some of the other projected budget drivers that we have for the current year would be to make sure we continue to fund all of the contractual steps and COLA increases for represented and non-represented employees. As we have discussed with the committee, we actually are in the final year of all of our collective bargaining agreements, so we will be beginning that process early in the next year. We always look at our special education tuition and transportation expenses. Dr. Stice, Ellison Wright, and the administrative staff with the central office spends a very good amount of time going through looking at every student that we know is currently in and out placement, what the trajectory is for that. We also look at the types of placements, and we look at any students who may be on our radar to ensure that we are appropriately budgeting for it. This year, we are also looking at any known impacts that might be occurring because of the current COVID-19 pandemic, as well as any impact to compensatory services. So we have been spending a considerable amount of time trying to build this budget up from the bottom to make sure we're capturing everything. One of the areas tied to the district improvement plan that we are considering is a special education literary coach, which would be a new position that we anticipate presenting to the committee in January. And then I work very closely with Chris Kelly and her staff to go through the curriculum renewal cycles to look at what our anticipated expenses are, what we need to put in the budget, and then how do we best flow that in for the curriculum, any associated technology, as well as professional development. A couple of other areas that will be new for this year is we actually are in the last year of our regular day mandatory transportation contract, which impacts our mandatory transportation, but also our athletic, extracurricular, and fee-based bus. So we will be going out to bid in the spring for that contract. So we are building assumptions into the budget, but we will not have a contract in place by the time the budget is done, most likely. The other part that we're working very closely to assess is there are a lot of items that we did put on the ESSER grant that were related to COVID-19, but we're in the process of assessing how many of those tools we want to build into the budget on an ongoing basis. So there are items that were grant funded one year that most likely will become operating expenses in the future. And then, as I mentioned, we're also constantly looking through our various capital projects and then the impact on software programs and maintenance as we cycle through those as well. So we will continue to ensure we are communicating throughout the process. We will be doing budget bulletins as part of Dr. Doherty's weekly updates to the staff and community. We have found that we have received positive feedback on those. We've enhanced them each of the past couple of years to make them more pointed, to give short snippets of what's in there and what the focus is. We will be having detailed presentations in January to the school committee, and then we will have the budget book and budget presentations available in January that will be distributed as part of the school committee packets, but they will also be available on the district webpage. And then we do have the calendar of events, and these actually are also listed out in the school committee packet. We do begin our budget presentations begin on December 7th. The Board of Selectmen did hear the town's presentations this past week. Those did wrap up on Tuesday evening this week, or it was either Monday or Tuesday. I feel like all the days are blending. And that did include Dr. Doherty and I sat in on that one because it did involve the town core as well as the capital update. So we wanted to ensure we were there for any potential questions as well as to understand any changes that were happening. After our presentations in January, it then goes to the town manager and FinCom. And right now we have tentative dates of February 24th, March 3rd, and March 10th for FinCom. And those are all subject to change as we get closer to the dates. And we will keep the committee apprised if there are any changes to the dates for the finance committee meetings, or when we know definitively when the school budget will be presented to FinCom. And that is everything I had as just sort of a high level primer for the process.
Great, thank you, Gail. I guess I'd open it up. It's good job, great presentation. Open it up to the committee. Is there any questions? Erin?
Thank you, Gail. So these are both just general questions. One, can we get a copy of that slideshow that you just did?
Oh, yes, sorry,
Okay.
I didn't, was it not in the, I don't think I had it done in time for the packet.
Didn't I send it? I'm sorry. I thought I
We
sent
will.
it.
You sent us the other one. I don't think you sent us this one, but,
All right.
but forgive me if I'm wrong.
No, that could be me. We were tweaking it, so we
No,
will make
it's-
sure you get sent out.
It's okay. After the fact is fine for this. And then my other question is, when the budget book comes out, can school committee members get a hard copy of that if we swing by central office?
Yes.
Because in a normal year, they would get a hard copy, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's just a lot to print at home, so.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
I'd appreciate a physical copy. Thank you.
Yes. But yes, I just had to laugh because I was like, ooh, I have to make sure I have that done before Linda.
Gail, where are we with the grant that runs out on 12/31 relative to, are we spending as much of it as we can? And secondly, is there any, I haven't been busy and haven't paid attention as much to the renewed stimulus talks. So is there any word on whether that stuff is going to get extended or not?
I don't think there's a lot of stimulus with the stimulus right now.
Okay.
So as of right now, everything we have heard and all the calls I've been participating in is they basically said, do not anticipate anything getting extended. December 30th is the date for everything. So that is the assumption we are going on. So that impacts two of the grants that we have. We're also reaching out to determine what it will mean for all of the various types of leaves that are going on right now. So the FFCRA leave that is providing for coverage for families for a multitude, but mainly the biggest one is for childcare. That does end effective December 30th as of now. We have not heard that it has been extended. So as soon as we hear anything, we will let folks know. As far as the spending of the COVID relief grant, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that I spent last weekend reconciling it. For an accountant, I guess it was exciting. We have gone through, I am very confident that the majority of it will be spent down. My goal is always not to return any funds. We have scrubbed pretty much every line item. What is good about this one is that it's good and challenging. It's meant to cover any items you did not have in your budget when you did your budget, or they're not ongoing items. It has to be specifically COVID related. So a lot of the work we did for facilities, so we're paying for the first 2 rounds of the MERV 13 filters because those would not have been factored into the budget. The other tricky part about this grant is they have come out with a lot of new guidance that it has to be services provided or goods received by December 30th. You cannot prepay. So I can't place an order for something that's going to happen next year. It has to be something I physically get. So all of the time the nurses are spending helping with the contact tracing, with helping the town, we're capturing all of that, all of the additional cleaning that we have, all of that's coming on here. We've done a lot of technology purchases to get the hotspots, the computers, the cameras, the microphones for the cameras and computers. Dr. Stice and I have spent, I think she dreads when I walk into her office because I'm asking her for stacks of time cards every day. So a lot of the assessments and compensatory services are all going on to the grant. We're also looking at legal fees. So for any of our MOAs that we did, those costs would not have been factored into the budget. So any of the new chemicals we purchased. So when I say we're literally scrubbing every single invoice to determine where it can go, we are doing that. Any additional PPE we bought specifically this year, we're looking at that. So the masks that we talked about last school committee that we bought for the band, those are paid for out of the grant because we never would have purchased those but for COVID. So the other part that we are doing, I'm working with Desi now on amendments, is we cannot pay for, so people who are taking the leave but are getting paid for it, those people we already budgeted, they were here, we anticipated paying for them. Instances in which we had to backfill them with another person while they were getting paid, we are able to capture some of that on the grant. Or instances, so this year we had to add a full-time remote kindergarten teacher. We never would have had to have done that. It was not budgeted. So the portion of that person's salary from when they started to December 30th, we're putting on the grant. So we really are looking at every feasible expense that we can put on there. So I am cautiously optimistic that we will be spending as close to 100% of it that we can.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from Tom?
So it's actually a question I was going to hold for the consent agenda from Jeff Corum, but it fits right in here.
I was giving you a chance.
I'd give you a chance to answer this one for us. Yep. Regarding the COVID relief fund money for the meal program, there was an article in the Boston Globe this weekend about families having trouble getting to their school to get food. Do we know if any RPS students have had difficulties?
So I'm going to answer that in a couple of ways because I'm not 100% certain if it's all students are RPS students. So Danielle and I work very, very closely. So in instances in which there are families who do not have transportation who live within Reading, we do work very closely. Danielle has been great. She is also distributing food to people's houses. So we have instances in which people are quarantined. They cannot come out and get the food. We will make every effort to get it to their houses. We also have, it's an amazing community. I will say we've had a lot of people who have come by asking if they can pick up for other families. If you've seen how we do it, we have a number system where you just put the number in your dashboard so we know how many meals we're providing for you. And there are some that will have 2 or 3 numbers because they're picking up from multiple families. So they'll say this family's quarantined, this family, they're home with their children. So we'll have one family pick up for 4 families. So we are working very closely with that. We are very fortunate that we do have one individual who is helping out as much as they can with our Metco families in Boston to get the food to them. We also are ensuring it, I will say, especially for our Metco families, we have tried to be very creative with having folks that may be heading into the city that are willing to drop off food do that. We also have provided information where there might be areas more locally that they are eligible to receive the food from as well. So it's a combination. We're trying to make sure every family that has a need, we are providing it to them. And I will say the staff has been amazing. We've had other staff members who may know of families that are in need, that they want to be as helpful and discreet as possible. As you can imagine, food insecurity is not an easy subject for people. So Danielle and I work with whoever comes in and says, here's the need, here's the student count. It's actually not even a student count, it's a child count from age 0 onward. So here are the number of students. We will provide the meals, and there are many people who have helped us with the delivery. So I don't know if that answers Jeffrey's question, but we are doing everything we can to ensure we're addressing the needs of the families.
I think that answers it perfectly. He just clarified real quick, the Globe story was not about RPS students. That's why he was asking about whether it also affected RPS students.
It actually,
you answered
it does.
Perfectly.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And I have one more question. I think you might have covered it when you were talking about some of the transportation that you and Dr. Stice are working through, but are we budgeting the SEAM transportation cost or the collaborative transportation bus cost back up to 2019 levels or 2020 levels? You said the regular day is up for negotiation for the athletics, but is the other bus one that we just voted on going to be budgeted back to normal levels again?
So for the SEAM contract, we actually are budgeting, that's a known contract, so they have a 3-year contract that they just negotiated, so we know what the rates are. We, as part of the process, look at every student. We look at whether or not they have transportation or could potentially have transportation, and that's how we build up that budget. So it is, we're trying to do 2 things, is go back pre-pandemic to make sure any expenses that weren't happening, we put back in, and also post-pandemic for any expenses that happened that won't happen. So we're trying to look at it both ways. So I will caution that when we start to look at the numbers, if you're looking at last year's actuals, they will be slightly skewed because there were a lot of one-time purchases, and then there were also a lot of expenses that didn't happen that historically could have. Oh, I think Chuck's muted.
I apologize. Aaron, is that an older one or did you have a question?
That's older.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to policy BDF. Is that, you want to?
Yes. I'll do the motion and then we can work our way from there. Move to accept the second reading of policy BDF, advisory committees to the school committee.
Second.
File BDF, advisory committees to the school committee.
Move to waive the reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Aaron?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay. Any comments?
So Chuck, the language that's updated here is from your conversation with Colby.
Yeah, can you put it up, or I just want to make sure it is.
Sure, I'll pull it up. Hold on a second. Everybody see that? So the language you added is the designee or school committee chair if it is an advisory committee where the superintendent is not a participant.
Yes. That's, Colby thought that would work fine. I don't know that there were any other changes that we talked about.
Yeah, I think that was the only change, Chuck.
Okay, then I guess we're ready for the vote. Tom,
Aye.
John,
Is that
Aye.
Sean or John?
I said John, so
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Wow. Okay, that was the fastest we've ever done a policy. Or this committee has ever done a policy, I should say. So John, did you want to talk about the Student Opportunity Act?
Yes, I did. Several months ago, I did do a presentation for the committee about the Student Opportunity Act, and then we kind of put it on the back burner because of COVID. And the reason was the due date was supposed to be, well, originally I believe it was supposed to be April, then it got changed to June. So now they are definitely setting the date for January 15th. So when I was talking to Chuck, I felt it was important to try to get the Student Opportunity Act approved by the school committee tonight rather than in January, where the focus is primarily on the budget. So the plan doesn't look that much different than what I presented before, with the following exceptions. Since you have now approved district improvement plan, I took two areas in particular and inserted them into the plan. One of the suggestions that was made the first time we reviewed this was to include literacy as part of one of the areas. So I took the special education literacy goal that the school committee approved in the district improvement plan, and I inserted the action steps and information in there for your review. The other piece that I added in here was all of the action steps that were in the plan for number 3, which was diversifying the educator administrator workforce through recruitment and retention. Essentially taking the language that is in the district improvement plan that you approved and putting it in here. Everything else is essentially the same as it was previously.
I keep muting, sorry. Why don't we do a motion and then we'll have discussion.
Move to approve the Reading Public Schools Student Opportunity Act plan.
Second.
Second, Sean?
John, just one question. On the bottom of, I don't see page numbers on here, but it's number 3, diversifying the workforce. So I hear what you just said, which is the action steps mirror what's in the district improvement plan. I don't have the district improvement plan at my fingertips right now, but my recollection is that the outcome we measured there was about, a number of interviews or the percentage of interviews or something along those lines ticking up year over year. Is there a reason that the outcome that we're capturing here is about an increase in staff of color? Or am I missing something that I'm not remembering from the district improvement plan?
That was in there too.
Yeah, that was
also in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind.
You were thinking of the interview percentages or percentage of interviews, Sean.
Yeah.
This was the ultimate result is doubling the staff overall.
Okay, works for me. Thanks.
Anyone else? Carla?
Thank you, Chuck. John, the only comment I had was under commitment 3, so page 84. Under that first paragraph, it says, please note that targets will be added to this section once SY 2020 data is released this fall.
Yeah, that was in the original template of the state. So that I looked to see if the state updated any information regarding that, and they did not. So
Okay.
I left it in there.
All right.
Tom?
I just wanted to, express my appreciation for it, John, and I especially appreciate the links to the research directly. I think that helps us to understand the background behind it all. If we click through those links, they're live links. We can all click on them and actually read the materials there. I appreciate seeing that, and the one obviously that's near and dear to my heart is the reading one that we've talked about multiple times. So thank you for including the Castles, Rassel, and Nation related one in particular. That's great to see. It does make me ask. I think this is what we've agreed to, so I have no problem approving it from that perspective. But those research studies are about all students, not just struggling students. So I'd love to see us as a group at some point in time in the future bring that back to the table, the all student side of it as well. So, but I agree this is what we agreed to as a group, and so I'm happy to move forward with it as it is.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, seeing no other discussion, we're ready for the vote. Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And now we'll do the hybrid remote learning update.
Do you want to do the reports first, Chuck, or
Oh, I was going to save those for last. That's fine. Yeah, because yeah, that's fine. We can.
Right.
I was waiting until but that's fine. Yeah. Let's do the reports.
all right? This may take a second because I'm going to have to. Can people see this or no?
Yes, we can.
We can
Okay.
see.
But it's stuck on AP
Kate's
Scholars.
Yeah, I
presentation.
see the AP Scholar.
Okay. All right. Let me see where I can find it. Hold on. All right, hold on one second. When I stopped the previous presentation, something got messed up, so I'm gonna have to go back in. Hold on. I'm assuming you can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to do reports. Okay. Okay, Dr. Stice is going to start.
Hello, good evening, everyone. We just
Hi,
had.
Jen.
Hi, Chuck. I'm glad to be here tonight. We just had a couple of quick updates. One was that at this past month's CPAC meeting, we went over our new updated program description. And before I go in and give you a quick overview about that, I just want to highlight the amazing work the staff did. They've actually been working on these for years and had really presented an outline that was very thorough around each of the programs. And so what we were able to do this year was take that work and put them in a narrative form so that they read in kind of the same format and really will become a resource for teams and parents as they make decisions about what are best programs and supports for students as they go forward. And I know that the district has been waiting a very long time for these. And again, the staff has been amazing kind of working through these. We've added a lot of research to make sure they are current and rooted in best practices, which is really what you see in each of the classrooms. So for the staff to be teaching students in person and remotely and doing all of the COVID special education plans and compensatory services at the same time as working on these program descriptions, that should be really applauded. It was a lot of work and important to get it out for the community. So what we have done is they are all posted on our website with a little narrative explaining what their intent is, and that at some point we may be updating them as the students need change or as the research within the community around best practices change. But we did align some of our program names, and we wanted to highlight that for the school committee tonight and for the public because they are a little bit different. So we kept RISE the same. People have had a wonderful experience at RISE and really are connected to it. And so RISE remains the same, which is Reading Integrated School Experience. And we really like the idea of having an action verb that stood for something. So we challenged each of the programs to really come up with a word that describes what they do, but is also an action word. And we really felt it was important to do this because there had been some negative connotations and nicknames for our current programs. And we really wanted to highlight the good work that is happening. So the TSP program, which is at Killam and Coolidge and the high school, is now going to be called REACH. And they really felt that it stood for Resiliency, Executive Functioning, Academics, Coping Strategies, and Habits of Mind. And that they work with students who have social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties to really gain all of these skills. The program at that is currently a combination of a bunch of C programs that is currently housed at the elementary school level, is at Wood End, and then Coolidge in the high school is going to be called SAIL for Strategies to Support Academics, Independence, and Life Skills. And the LEAD program, which stands for Language, Executive Functioning, Academics, and Determination, is replacing the Bridge program, which is at Joshua Eaton and Parker and the high school. And finally, the other combination of C programs that is at Birch Meadow is going to be called SOAR, Social Skills, Organizational Skills, Academics in Real World Situations. And we really worked on developing a continuum of service so that students are really getting what they need and we're not getting caught up in the semantics of what programs are called. And so again, if anyone in the community would like to look at them, they are posted on the student support website. And Allison Wright and I do weekly office hours with anybody who has any questions or concerns. We are happy to meet with people and review them and review any outstanding issues that still may be arising with the program. So our next steps, we're going to continue to work on the entrance and exit criteria. We were actually very fortunate to have Jillian Sullivan and Flory Johnson come to the last CPAC meeting and talk about the work they are doing on the entrance and exit criteria for counseling. Because as we were talking about earlier tonight with Lynna and Kate, a lot of students could benefit from some additional social emotional support, but is it directly related to their disability and their goal areas? And what would it look like for them to move out of that and maybe get general education support? So we will be working on these for our programs and services. And there is also a program description for the students who receive Learning Center services. We did not change the name, but we did kind of define what that is. The other thing that is coming up is that we've been working on our 5-year plan. It's a little bit different than we'd originally envisioned with COVID and needing to work with the staff. But on the January 12th CPAC meeting, we will be talking about the 5-year plan for special education and student support services. And this will include a lot of discussion about the reading professional development that we are planning on doing and how we're going to be supporting our program evaluations. The other thing I just wanted to inform the school committee is that we did have an outstanding OCR complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. It was dated back from 2015 through 17. And all of the issues within that complaint have now been resolved. The parent and the complainants submit what their concerns are, and then we are asked to submit any evidence we have. And OCR then reads through everything, and it took a very, very long time. But they did finally issue a notice that everything has been resolved. But as with any anything that comes our way, any questions or concerns, we always look at that to make sure we are updating our procedures and our practices. And we've done a lot of work with some of the concerns that were raised in that. So Allison Wright, who is the assistant to student support, also is in charge of our summer school, and she has done an amazing job of updating our notifications for families regarding extended school year services. We now have a database and an electronic notification system, which is really helpful for us. Also, within this complaint, there were a lot of questions and concerns about reading services and our language-based instruction, which we've been working very diligently on. We've added baseline assessments, and we're really talking about, are we really assessing students appropriately, especially in terms of reading and writing, and then matching the best instructional practices to that. And then finally, another thing that we have added is we do track the services we provided to students so that if there are missed services and services that need to be made up, we are able to, as Chris Kelly says, we're very nimble at gathering that data, and we are able to share it with families and ensure that the students are getting what they need. So for us, it was really important that we made sure we were taking all of the concerns from that report and addressing them in our current practice. And that's our brief update from student support tonight.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think I'm next up, unless
Hey,
there's any
Chris.
questions. I think unless there's any questions for Jen, I think there might be.
I have, Chuck, may
Oh,
I?
Carla, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Stice, thank you for that presentation. In terms of the OCR case, I cannot express how deeply disturbed I am with this entire case. Though this was considered a legal win, if you will, for the district, we have miserably failed these two students. It is inexcusable that the case was reviewed by OCR for, was it 3 or 5 years? That it was with OCR for?
I'm actually not sure off the top of my head, but well before I came into the district.
Right. And I guess it is inexcusable to me that our former director of student services is now employed by the district's legal team. I am grateful that the district learned from the past and now has Dr. Stice and her team working to educate our special education students. We know that districts are judged and valued by how well they take care of their most vulnerable populations. There seems to be a newfound confidence and trust that is being built between our special ed team and parents. This is very hopeful. So thank you, Dr. Stice and your team, for your continued dedication to our special ed families. One thing that in reviewing this report that was disturbing to me is that these cases get filed by families because of what they feel are things that their students aren't getting from the district. And in this particular case, you know, it says the district currently employs 8 reading specialists to provide reading services to students. For this reason, OCR is dismissing allegations because they consider that resolved. Okay, it's fabulous that that we are now providing those types of services, but what happens to these students? So for me, I've read that theme throughout this document, that I know OCR has OCR has to hold districts accountable, but what about individual students? So it fundamentally, I have a problem with the whole write-up from OCR and the length of time it took them to review the case. So.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Carla. I do think, you know, that was really out of our hands, the district's hands, in terms of how long it took OCR to review the case, and their findings are obviously their findings. But as you said, we are working really hard to build connections with students and families, and we are working with them, which is one of the reasons Allison and I are doing the office hours. We are talking to families about any concerns they have and really trying to address them so that parents feel like we're really partnering and that they don't need to file complaints going forward, that we are addressing the needs of all students.
And that is very evident from what I've been hearing from parents, that that they feel like there's a collaboration from you and your team, and that they're being listened to. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Tom?
Just quickly want to echo the thank you to Dr. Stice and her team for how things are going now. You know, as a parent, I attend the CPAC meetings as well, and you see the collaboration that goes on in that space. You see the collaboration that's happening with their subcommittee on reading as well that's happening there. So they're taking this very, very seriously. They're really focused on improving things, and it's great to see. I have the same concerns about the way OCR handled this that Carla does, but I want to focus on where we are now and what Dr. Stice and the rest of her team are doing. And I just want to continue to thank you for what's happening there, the relationships that are in place, and the continued positive movement that's happening amongst the CPAC team and others there. So thank you.
Great,
Thank you all very much.
There's one Q&A on this topic as well, Chuck. Jeffrey Coram, Ridge Road. What I took from the OCR document was make sure your IEP is done properly. And I recall CPAC having a special presentation about IEPs last year, and making sure the IEP is complete and signed in a timely fashion was a key takeaway. And I would agree with that takeaway as well. There was a lot there that seemed to be procedurally ruled against the person in question, as opposed to what otherwise happened, but also because without those signatures, the district in some way, shape, and form can't do certain things as well. So we as parents have some responsibilities too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Chris?
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Jen. I agree that the partnership that's been developed between the special ed and the Learning and Teaching Department has been really important and so valued. I have a very few updates. First of all, curriculum guides, as promised, our teams have been working really hard to get every curriculum guide in every subject, every grade, published by the end of the calendar year. I did a little bit of adding, and there were 172 to create. And we have exactly 4 left that are in the revision stage. All the others are done and up on our website. I will give the caveat that Linda Engelson has been putting them all up on the website for me, which is awesome, as they've been coming in and as they've been edited. So we are cleaning them up so that they're a little organized, but those will all be organized and up and ready by December 31st. So thank you to the department heads, the curriculum coordinators, the curriculum leads, and certainly the teachers that worked on these. These are all documents that were created by the teams that are working with them to really say this is what you can expect in a year's time. And they're based on the math standards. The only caveat is the AP courses have very specific AP syllabi. So those are linked to the AP website for that. So I'm extremely proud to say that we did that. Obviously, that's the first step in doing lots of curriculum work, but it was a Herculean effort, and it really required every single person in the district to work on that. Really, in the last 2 years, it certainly amidst our COVID environment. The second update I have is about at a school committee meeting several months ago, my learning and teaching team did an update on sort of some curriculum updates. I had mentioned that we were going to publish the PowerPoint, but add even more details of sort of where are we with everything. And that was sent out to the community in one of Dr. Doherty's weekend updates, his COVID updates that go up every weekend, or even sometimes more often. But it's also on the Learning and Teaching website, as are the curriculum guides. And that is, if you go on the Reading K-12 and you look under departments, you will find that under the Learning and Teaching team, and everything is right there. In addition, we also publish seasonal staff newsletters. We linked that there as well. So if any of you or any of the members of the community are interested in seeing what's going on with the staff newsletter, that you could take a look at some of the things that we're talking to our staff about. Additionally, part of my role, as well as working with curriculum, is working on professional development. So I thought I'd give you a couple of key updates on that. We are running 2 Reading Institute courses after the holidays. One is a repeat course, which has been extremely well received, on universal design for learning. And we will be running that again for more people. And I believe that the signups have been robust. We are working with a trainer within the district as well, and she's been doing some training at some of our schools and working with trainers from every single school in the district. But this is a graduate level course, a 1-credit course for those that really want to dig in. And we're really excited to offer that again. We are also offering cultural proficiency, which is under the lens of working with English language learners, and that will be running after the Christmas break, the holiday break, excuse me. And we are in the process of building and securing a presenter to work on a cultural proficiency course under the lens of race. So that more will coming. That'll probably be held in March and April. In addition, we have a full professional development day in January on January 15th. Which is a Friday, and the theme for that is resiliency and support in our COVID impacted classrooms. There is an extensive write-up about that date in the staff newsletter if you want to read it, but really just the cliff notes of that is that we've basically, working with our professional development committee, divided the day into 3 segments, and the lens is technology tools, and working with our ITS teams are actually going to spend some time having teachers sharing some of the things that have really worked for them and doing breakout groups with that. Our second theme under that day is looking at communal care and how are we taking care of ourselves and each other, because we know that this year has been really hard for everyone, so that we can continue to fill each other's cups up. We need to continue to focus on that. And then our third part of the day is looking at equity, and that equity piece is everything from meeting the needs of all learners, looking at trauma, looking at social emotional learning, as well as we have some area medco directors coming to do some presentations. So we're really excited about the day. There's a lot of PD going on in Reading, which are really bolstering our teachers' work. But I just want to, just emphasize that I'm just so very proud of the work that our teams have been doing. If you had ever told any of us in early March or February that this is the path we would have taken, we would have never even predicted it. And yet here we are. And it's a continued work in progress, and we're just constantly evaluating how effective we are, how we can support each other, support our students, and really bring as quality education as we can each and every day.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Chuck, Kerry's going to do the human resources piece.
Hey, Kerry.
Is she on mute?
She may be muted.
Sorry about that. You'd think by now I would have this, worked out. So I just have a brief update about the vacant teacher and paraeducator vacancies in the district. This first slide reflects the vacant positions in the elementary schools and in the preschool, the RISE program. So as you can see at Wood End and Barrows, we don't have any current vacancies. However, we do have a reading tutor vacancy at Joshua Eaton, TSP paraeducator, regular education paraeducator at Killam. We have a cohort B lunchroom paraeducator vacancy at Birch Meadow, and at the RISE preschool, a paraeducator position, 15.75 hours and a 26-hour weekly paraeducator, as well as a long-term substitute integrated preschool teacher. So the next slide reflects the vacant positions at Coolidge, Parker, the high school, and district-wide. So here, the slide sort of speaks for itself. I think notably at the high school, there are numerous, paraeducator vacancies that, present some challenges. But overall, this is just a snapshot of where we stand in terms of vacant positions.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck,
Dr. Dart.
how do you want to proceed next?
So I would, we're in we'd have committee reports before we go in, then we'll go into the hybrid update. So Carla, you came up on my screen first. Do you have a report?
I don't. Thank you.
Aaron?
No report tonight.
Huh?
No report tonight, Chuck.
John?
We did have a meeting of the ad hoc committee. That is going to be ending after the next meeting next week. We are drafting a letter of endorsement on the position to be delivered to the Library Board of Trustees.
Great, thank you. Sean?
Nothing else, thanks.
And I don't have a report either. Okay, Dr. Doherty, did you want to do the fall or the hybrid update?
Sure. Oh, here we go again. What did I do?
It was just up there a second ago.
I know. No, that's not what I want. Hold on.
That looks right, John.
That looked right to me.
Okay. Can you see it now?
No.
All right. I don't know why Gail let me do the slides for her because I can't even do them for myself.
Nope.
How's that?
There it is.
Okay. So this is a little lengthy, but there is a lot of information that obviously every 2 weeks that, and we do try to keep the community informed through the updates. And we are trying to find ways to make them as succinct as possible without repeating information. So I hope people are finding those helpful and informative. I want to do just some health and safety pieces first. Some of this I have talked to the committee about, presented in the past. Just again to mention it, the Reading, Town of Reading Board of Health are sponsoring the Mask Up Reading campaign. You're starting to see signs posted all over the community. I know I've seen several signs on our school areas. So it's just another way to, to keep reinforcing that message, how important it is for everyone to wear masks, maintain proper social distancing, getting the flu shot, talking to everyone about COVID precautions, staying home when you have symptoms, things like that. So the student and staff cases, and I'm going to show you a slide in a minute that updates the slide that I've been showing the last few meetings. What we are seeing, and I do want to put a shout out to Mary Juliana and all of the school nurses who basically now spend their entire day contact tracing and addressing student needs, not just with COVID, but with any day-to-day medical needs. They have just done an amazing job. But what we are finding in the transmissions is that, first of all, none of the positive cases up to this point have been transmitted in school. And the reason why we know that is because when we're doing the contact tracing, what we're being told is that there is a family member, or whether it be a parent or a sibling, that may have tested positive, and that the student received the transmission through either a family member like that, or what we're also finding, the other major community spread is social gatherings or sports and recreation activities outside of school. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The quarantines are now based on certainly what close contact is defined as, following the new guidelines, which I will go into in a minute. So this is the updated chart as of yesterday on what has been happening in our district. You could see that we have a combination of remote positive cases and in-person positive cases, resulting in a number of students being quarantined. So you could see at the high school, for example, that's been our largest increase over the last 2 weeks in terms of positive cases and students being quarantined. We have had some cases at the middle school as well, and at the elementary, and we did have our first RISE preschool case this past week. I will tell you, one of the things that seems to be effective in reducing the spread in the schools has been the fact that we have the week on, week off model, and that Friday is a remote day. It seems like a lot of these cases are coming up during the remote week, or it happens over the weekend. And when you go back the 2 days where Friday is a remote day, it does help significantly when we're doing the contact tracing and reducing the possible spread in the schools. So going to that week on, week off model from a epidemiological standpoint has actually worked out very well. In terms of staff, we have seen also some staff members since the last report. There's been an increase. So currently we have had 15 staff members test positive, which has resulted in between the students and staff, we've had 43 staff members quarantined. None of them have tested positive in those quarantines up to this point. As we are now entering the second holiday season, we just want to remind people about the travel advisory. Unless you're going to Hawaii or people from Hawaii are coming here, all other states are impacted by this. So all visitors entering Massachusetts, including returning residents, they're required to complete the form. This is all on the website, the DPH website. Quarantining for 14 days, or they have to produce a negative COVID-19 test result that has been administered up to 72 hours prior to your arrival in Massachusetts. So we just want to remind families about the travel advisory, that it still is in effect for in Massachusetts. There's also been updated quarantine rules. You can now, and originally these were put out by the CDC, and then Mass DPH last week updated theirs to match the CDC requirements. So you can now test out after 7 days of strict quarantine if you get a test taken on day 5 or later, and the individual is not experiencing any symptoms at that point, and the individual conducts active monitoring through day 14. You can test out after actually, you don't have to test out. You can end your quarantine after 10 days of strict quarantining if you've not experienced any symptoms up to that point, and the individual conducts active monitoring through day 14. You do not need a test for the 10-day option. And then 14 days, which was the original quarantine period, as long as the individual has experienced any symptoms during the quarantine period, they need to do the required 14 days, even if they have a negative COVID test, or the individual indicates they are unwilling or unable to conduct active monitoring. So there are now different options. The responsibility is more now put on the individual instead of the regulations. But this has been a change since the last time we met. And then in terms of quarantining, I did include this slide, and we did send this out to the community in the weekly update. Basically, the 10 tips for when you have to quarantine. And they're pretty self-explanatory, but staying at home, monitoring for symptoms, getting rest, staying hydrated, exercise if possible, making sure that if you have an appointment to call the healthcare provider ahead of time. If you have medical emergencies, tell the dispatch that you have been exposed to COVID-19, and et cetera, and et cetera. You can see there. So we have been including this, and when we have had at the building level been communicating to families whose children have been quarantined, we have been sending this out as well. Chuck, I don't know if you want me to stop at this section and take any questions or move on.
Sure. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? I don't see any.
There's a Q&A question, Chuck, that is relevant to the previous slide, I think.
From Jeffrey Corum.
Yeah. It says, is there a not missing on the 14-day release criteria?
No. If you experience any symptoms at all, you have to go the full 14 days.
Right, I agree.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, I'm going to move on to winter sports. So this is an excerpt from the Middlesex League communication that came out, which I did include in the weekly update this past weekend. I know we had a lot of discussion about this at the last school committee meeting. Right now, we're in phase 1 of the of winter sports, which is the practices and tryouts. Those started this past Monday. There were a couple of exceptions, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So during this time, we're going to assess, and Tom Zaya and the coaches have been monitoring this very closely. So they're going to assess the effectiveness of the modifications that the MIA has put out, making sure that our cleaning protocols are impacted. And we have received the cleaning protocols for both Burbank and Reading Gymnastics Academy at this point. So we're also going to measure the cases for the virus. And then if, as a league, we feel that we can move on to phase 2, this will be a decision that'll be made late December. Phase 2 is when we would start the interscholastic competitions, which we can start as early as January 2nd, but it may get pushed to January 11th based on the above factors in phase 1. The schedules are going to be designed so there's only going to be 2 communities playing each other in a given week. These games are going to be mostly on the weekends, and that's going to be also available dependent upon ice time and gymnastics time. Basketball definitely will be on Saturdays because that's designated to gyms and field houses, which are in the schools. I know there was a lot of talk about spectators. Initially, we are not going to permit spectators to attend. We again will be meeting as a league prior to the start to finalize whether the competitions can occur as well as the status of the spectators. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of teams that we've had to delay the practices of phase 1 due to quarantining. Boys hockey is delayed until December 20th, and varsity and JV boys basketball is delayed until December 28th. And this is because we have had a couple of positive cases resulting in members of these teams to be quarantined. So Chuck, I don't know if you want me to stop here or go on to the next section.
Sure. Any questions from the committee? Carla?
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, John. John, you said that you're going to be reconvening with the league at the end of December. Do you have that meeting scheduled? Because everybody's off that week, right?
The meeting is going to happen just prior to the new year. We haven't scheduled the date yet, no.
Okay.
But the superintendents are pretty much around.
So I guess my concern is if spectators are allowed, has any work been done on what the protocols will be in the facilities? Or or would it be determined, or the facilities determine what the protocols are for distancing?
No, there would be a league-wide set of protocols.
Is that Carla, you all set?
I am. Thank you.
So I want to give you some updates on hybrid learning. First, I want to talk a little bit about the survey. We've got less than a week to go, December 23rd. I will resend the link out this weekend for everyone that has not completed it and would like the opportunity to. So far, as of this morning, 299 staff, 1,406 parents, and 795 students, and that's grades 6 through 12 for the students. I just wanted to give you a preliminary glimpse at one of the questions that we've asked all three groups. So we asked students, parents, and staff to rate their experience so far with the model that they are in on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being the most positive, 1 being not as good of an experience. So first, the student piece, you could see the majority is the 3, 4, and 5 range, where 4 being the largest percentage for students. And just so you're aware, we have students in all the different models that are responding to these surveys, whether it be remote or pretty much full-time if they're a high need student, or students that are in the high school hybrid or the middle school hybrid. Or with parents, we asked a similar question. We did define it a little bit more with what 5 meant and what 1 meant. Again, you can see that the highest percentage is 4. There is a high percentage also for 3 and 5, with very few parents rating it a 1 or a 2. So this is a very positive response. Again, this is out of 1,406 responses thus far. And then we asked staff a very similar question where we wanted the focus to be on resources and support, including training, technology, and you could see that although the percentages are a little bit different, it follows a similar pattern as the other 2 surveys did. So I think it shows that people overall are feeling positive about the model that they are in. We know it's not perfect, and there's a lot of rich data in these surveys that we're, including the comments, that we're going to be able to really drill down and find out where the patterns are and what we can do to improve, continue to improve the model. I also want to give you an update about time on learning regulations. The State Board of Education met on Tuesday to amend the current time on learning regulations. As an editorial comment, I wish they had done this in the summer when we were trying to put together our hybrid models with a specific number of hours. I think it would have made our job in districts a lot easier when we were developing schedules and working with staff on what it would look like. But essentially what they've done is effective January 19th. If districts and schools are in a hybrid model, they must provide at least 35 hours of live instruction over a 10 school day period, averaged across the grades in the model. So live instruction means the combination of in-person and remote synchronous. So as long as you have a combination of that that's 35 hours or more, you would fulfill the requirements. Students must have an opportunity to interact each school day with teachers. That is part of the amendment. If you are in a complete remote learning model, you must provide synchronous instruction each day, and effective also in January. If you are in a remote learning model, you must provide at least 40 hours of synchronous instruction over a 10-day period. So those are the amendments. In November, we were asked to do a breakdown of what it would look like in our schools with the schedules that we had, and we got a preliminary report last Friday. So we have been preliminarily cleared for the time and learning regulations. At the time, grade 4 was remote, so that was the way we responded. But you can see that the number of hours for live synchronous instruction at the elementary is 41, and at the middle school and high school is 48. That is above the required 35. We do not have any fully remote asynchronous days. And you see for the blended districts what the hours were, which matches up above.
John, do we know why they picked January 19th?
I believe some of it may have to do, well, I think they want to give districts time. There's a third of the districts that do not qualify for this requirement. So I think they're trying to give districts time to adjust. Some of it may require in some districts collective bargaining because some districts may have bargained a certain amount of synchronous versus asynchronous time or in-person time. It also, January 19th is around the change in semester, so that may be also a factor, Chuck, is my guess.
Okay, thank you.
I think Sean had a question.
Sean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, two questions. So John, one is on the previous page it said 35 hours was a requirement if you're in a hybrid model, or 40 if you're in a remote model. Is our remote program, is our fully remote program for families that chose it, is that subject to the 40-hour minimum, or because our district is in a hybrid model, everything on a blended basis is subject to 35?
That's a great question. I believe they would also have to, let me think about this for a second, because it was explained to us. I think because we have a blended model and families chose to do that, they would fall under the 35.
Okay. And then my second question is, we've talked a number of times in these meetings about how we made an intentional choice to make it probably a little bit more difficult for us to get more time in the building, but the trade-off was that allowed us to have a much more robust synchronous model when kids are home, when kids are remote. And so here we're seeing sort of the result of that, right? Where we're well clear of this threshold at 48 hours. My question is, does this give us an opportunity, really purely just out of interest, to see, some benchmarking on what other districts or, some of the districts we benchmark against, what they actually are currently delivering and have been delivering from a synchronous instruction perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my understanding is that that data is going to be released soon. Everyone got the reports that you see here, and I believe the state is going to be releasing that information soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Couple other things. I'm trying each time I do one of these to give some thank yous. I do want to thank, and last time I thanked the work that our central office administrators and administrative assistants have been doing. I want to put a huge shout out this week to our principals and our assistant principals and our RISE preschool director for the amazing work that they're doing. Not only are they running schools in this new world, but they also have to play a very key role now in the actual management of the day-to-day in-person school. So it is not uncommon that you would see principals substitute teaching in classrooms because we have a staffing deficiency, or you may see them fixing a piece of technology to help a teacher who may be having difficulty with a camera, or just going from place to place and troubleshooting. So they're still doing their pre-COVID job, and now we're adding to it these other factors. And so I just want to put a huge shout out for all of the work that our principals are doing, and our assistant principals, and our team chairs who are in the buildings as well, who in a lot of times are asked to be in an assistant principal's role if there's an administrator that is covering a class or something like that. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing. The other thing I wanted to do, Chuck did mention at the beginning of the meeting that policy IMB, we weren't quite ready yet to bring back to the committee. I did meet with a large group of high school teachers on Monday. We had an excellent discussion. I got a lot of really good feedback from them. We are trying now to set up a meeting with a group of students. And so that's in the process, and that's why I did not want to bring the policy forward until I had an opportunity to meet with students. So Mrs. Boynton and I are in the process of setting up that meeting, and we're going to try to get it done before the holiday break.
Great, thank you, John.
And the most important part is the students. So just want to, there's a lot of good things going on in our schools. So this is a physical education class at Joshua Eaton. They are doing dolphin plank. If any of you are into yoga, you'll know what that is. But this is a way that helps strengthen your shoulders and forearms and arm muscles. So you can see that they're appropriately distanced apart. This is also at Joshua Eaton. This is a kindergarten student doing foundations and tracing the letter W. We also had in several schools this week, Hour of Code. Here we have a picture of a thank you, but also a picture of a student who has coded her first ever own video game. So this is happening at home. We have another student at home doing Hour of Code with playing cards. Someone did their name on a name tag in computer code. Those were all at the Killam Elementary School. Now I'm going to shift to Barrows. Barrows had Career Day recently. This is the chief architect in one of the classrooms who was explained what his role was as a chief architect. So we had several students dressed up in different career outfits. This student here is a painter, Pablo Picasso. It was also, I think it was vacation week or Hawaiian week or something like that, as well as one of the days at Barrows. So you could see everyone is dressed in their Hawaiian shirts as one of the days of Spirit Week. They also had favorite teams, Patriots and Red Sox. And this is grade 4 at Barrows that was doing a holiday collage for their families. The masks are getting very creative, very creative. And then I believe it was last night, Barrows held a holiday sing-along with both teachers and families. This is Pam Boston, who's a 4th grade teacher at Barrows. And you can see the students and families on the right. And we had 2 concerts this week. We had the Winter Song Fest by our RMHS chorus groups, and they did an amazing job. And then we had our winter concert, I believe it was last night or Tuesday night. All the days are starting to mesh together. We don't have really time to play this, but I did give you the link in the PowerPoint that I sent you. The concert's about 30 minutes. It was amazing. They did a great job. So just shout out to our fine arts department for the work that they did. And that's it, Chuck.
Great, thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions on that? Aaron?
So not really questions so much as comments. Regarding the policy IMB, I just want to say how much I appreciate that you're having those conversations with teachers and students. I know you had expressed some concern that, you know, whether it was setting precedent, but I think this policy is unique, and I really appreciate that you're getting that input. The other thing is regarding the survey. I'm assuming we'll get the full results at one of our meetings in January. So just a request, when you present the results, I would love to see it broken down by level. So like elementary parents, middle school parents, high school parents, you know, middle school students, high school students, same for staff, just to see if there's any trends at certain levels, or, you know, there might not be, but I would be very interested to see it presented that way.
Sure.
Anyone else? Thanks again, John.
You're welcome.
We have a consent agenda.
I think Carla.
Oh, Carla, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. Thanks for that presentation, John. Can you give us an update on where we're at with high school full hybrid, and what type of preliminary information did you get from those surveys? I know there was a specific question for high school parents and the situation that their students were in, and if they were happy with the, if they wanted to move to the full hybrid, or they were happy with the partial hybrid, or if they were happy with full remote, whichever they had chosen.
Sure. So we are waiting for the results of the survey before we're going to move any further on the model. So in terms of the what I'm seeing preliminarily so far on that one question that we asked all three groups, the parents were, it was 2/3, 1/3 moving to the alphabet split 4 days. The staff were the exact opposite, 1/3, 2/3, to stay basically the model that they have now. And the students, believe it or not, is more 50-50. That about half the students want to keep it the way it is and half the students want to change.
Okay, because I know I've heard from a number of parents of seniors, you know, expressing their concern of if we can't get the RMHS students back in full hybrid, what, you know, can we get the seniors back in as a suggestion? Personally, for me, I think that it should be all the students instead of just the seniors. I think that if we have the ability to bring the seniors in, then we should have the ability to bring all students back, especially if that is the desire of the students and staff and parents. So I just don't want to see us come back in January and then start to think about it and then do our coordination, and then it's April by the time we get kids back in the building. Because I do feel like if we're talking in terms of equity issues, I feel like this is our hugest equity issue of time in the building.
Understood. And that you've seen some positive results about our remote work.
Absolutely.
That would be compromised, as I mentioned last time, when you go to a 4-day model at the high school that would have some live streaming in it. Right. And the survey right now, the survey results are showing different opinions from different stakeholders. So it's not a clear cut. Parents want one thing, staff want another thing. Students are kind of like both, either way.
I'm concerned about the social emotional health of this group of kids. Really concerned. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, we have a consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none. Sean?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom? Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Okay, I believe that concludes tonight's business. Unless anybody had anything else. Great. I hope everyone has a happy holiday and be safe in the snow. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Oh, actually, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Sean.
Aye.
Carla.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Chuck. Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.